After a week off and some time to reflect, the opening skies bring on beautiful blue backgrounds for a Michigan track ready to be raced on as the series continues in the route through the regular season and a tried visit to the championship finale. Welcome to virtual Irish Hills, the Brooklyn, Michigan International Speedway, where we welcome you to another race of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series in 2026, live from Michigan. Tonight we race to remember, we race to honor, and we race, of course, to continue our plot line through the rest of 2026 in our forever rowdy 300. We're glad that you're with us on the KBueno Racing Network. We're up atop the broadcast booth here in the Irish Hills. I am Kenneth Bueno. Well, it's been quite a while since I've been a part of one of these broadcasts, but it's been a while since we've gone racing here at the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series. We took a week off for Memorial Day, got to remember, got to enjoy the Coca-Cola 600 weekend, and then get back to racing here at a 2-mile track that is known for lots of different grooves, high-intensity racing, and drafting along the way. Let's give you a refresher as to where we've gone, where we are going, and where we are tonight here in this 2026 schedule. We've now gone through the halfway mark, traversing that point of the regular campaign. So the idea of making the chase, running for the run to the championship, that is, of course, going to be very important as the drivers move on forward. We were just at Talladega a few weeks back. We had that off week in between Talladega and tonight's race at Michigan, and then brings on a whole gauntlet of racetracks to follow. Pocono, Phoenix, Daytona, Sonoma, the road course, the only road affair that we'll have all season long, and then back to the Noble 5 at the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But Michigan tonight, the second 2-mile D-shaped oval we visit in the schedule. Auto Club, a part of that earlier on in the campaign. So still a lot yet to write in terms of the season. However, the run for the chase going to be very important. Those points going to matter a ton more as we move into the rest of tonight and as that storyline develops on forward. We have a lot of content here for you here at Michigan. Let's get into all of it, starting with all the highlights from a few weeks ago from the Talladega Super Speedway, just our second Super Speedway affair on a track that's larger than 2 miles. We were at Echo Park Speedway in our last proper Super Speedway race, and this one turned out to be much more intense than Echo Park was. There's Jaden Porter looking on the outside for the lead. Plenty of 2-wide action. The biggest controversial topic, the percentage of fuel and the power output, how that would divide drivers in the draft, and how, of course, they would play their cards. There was the 6 machine of Ross Harlow on the outside, or Stephen Harlow on the outside, trying to make a move. 3 wide for the lead, Jaden Porter on the inside. And we had some fantastic racing very early on until it eventually delved into pit road strategy. Jason Anderson among those that were up front, but SKM took control. Richard Swavely, Justin Erb swinging from the high shelf, going for the race lead, and it would take a while before they would eventually relinquish it, go down with their teammates, and the idea was simple. Make a trip down pit road, do whatever you can on fuel strategy to make it all the way until the end. And it's untypical of Talladega to have these types of races. You usually see 3 and 4 wide, lots of chaos. Well, we'd see that later on in the affair, but it was all about making your name known on pit road. There were a couple other drivers in there as well, some of the Chevrolets, including the points leader of Brandon Banks. Then, of course, more pack racing throughout the fold, Kip Easley leading a group from the outside, and then finally, the chaos would ensue. Brandon Banks and a few others getting sideways. That would be the first big scare, and then the caution would officially come out late in the race. 15 laps to go, contact at the front of the pack, around goes Perusini, and a hard crash to the outside wall would bring in the yellow flag that changes everything. Drivers had to regroup, not think about strategy anymore, as drivers like Steven Stempien were semi-involved. Just a tough look there on the outside wall, facing it as it was coming to the end of that crash. And then more chaos as they regrouped, Stephen Harlow and a few others tagging along with each other, and the big one struck at Talladega. You'll always see that restart inside, 3 laps to go on Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series overtime. Jaden Porter leading the way, and in typical Talladega fashion, the field would rip apart on the back straightaway. Porter leading them through. Jamal Pugh running in second. Field would crash behind, and then it's Porter versus 2 DEP Racing cars. Jamal Pugh making the move on the inside. Help from his teammate all the way down the trial front straightaway, and Jamal Pugh stunning the show for his first career Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series win in just the 3rd team start for DEP Racing. Ethan Thompson getting a career best second a few weeks back at Kansas, and Jamal Pugh getting his first career win in unbelievable fashion. Upset alert at Talladega Superspeedway. A huge win for Pew and that DEP Racing team. They continue to make their names known, but trying, of course, to get into what is this very cutthroat battle to get into the top 12 and the chase. Of course, all of that led by Brandon Banks by only 3 points. Him and Jaden Porter have been attached by the hip ever since the season has started. Top 10s across the board for both of those drivers, including wins on both of their behalves. Garrett Walden leading the rookie driver group in the 3rd position, just 1 point ahead of Steven Stepien, and not too far away, only 10 points away from Charles Van Schaik in the top 5. So things get relatively close at the top of the chase. Remember, after the points reset, when we get to that chase for the DTH Cup, it is all about who is the best driver on points for the rest of that stint, and 16 points separating the last driver in and that first driver out. Jesse Whittington hoping he can continue to stay in that place, plus add a bit more to his buffer. He's tied alongside Kevin Roy in the run for 11th place. So with those fights, it is getting increasingly interesting, and we've seen plenty of drivers take shape at the front of any given group, and of course trying to run for a Droppin the Hammah Cup Series title. And one of those who has fallen just a little bit through the cracks, but is someone that is still worthy to note, it is Cedric Hunter, a multi-time winner this season, and trying to get another victory and get his first here at the virtual Michigan International Speedway. Cedric, we appreciate you joining us now, and you've been one of the more successful drivers here at Michigan, top 5s across the board here at this track, and even at tracks like Auto Club where you have performed well. What's going to be the secret sauce to try and get another win tonight here for Michigan? Cedric, you got a copy with us? All right, we'll see if we can try to get Cedric another time as he waits things out. Bit of technical difficulties trying to talk to Mr. Hunter, driver of the number 45. Several wins this season. His last at the moment coming from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway in our longest race of the season, but he's already run a few, Texas Motor Speedway being one, and the tire attrition run at Iowa Speedway being another. So it is going to be relatively fun to watch as we unfold through all of that. Let's get you through the track map, what we are to expect here tonight from Michigan. A 2-mile D-shaped oval, track formerly owned by NASCAR racing giant Roger Penske and one of NASCAR's biggest teams in Penske Racing. Opened, of course, back in 1968. Lots of IndyCar racing, lots of stock car racing in there as well. And tonight hosting the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series for just the second time. 14 degrees of banking in the corners, and of course a very long front and back straightaway. We've seen drafting all across the board, and we've seen 3 and 4, maybe 5 wide racing as we go down to it. Quick onboard lap there. Francisco Bacallao showing us the way around the Michigan International Speedway and just taking a dive into turn 1. We're going to have more power with these next-gen cars. We've been told 210 plus miles an hour in that first corner. Of course, entering turn 1, trying to make sure you stay above that level low seam at the inside of the racetrack in 1 and 2. Just rally down this back straightaway. We've seen plenty of big moves happen here. Send into turn 3, slight lift of the throttle. Stay, of course, on that first seam, hanging around the white line, and then just carry that car upward. Try to get the best arc as possible and make your move at the exit of turn 4. So that's a lap around this virtual Michigan International Speedway. Going to be fun to see the drivers take on this track here tonight. Well, tonight the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series field races for more than just a win here from the Irish Hills of Michigan. They race in remembrance of a NASCAR legend and the life of Kyle Busch. Kyle embodied everything that makes up the identity of stock car racing today. Brash, outspoken, competitive, and passionate about winning, something he did a lot of. Kyle is the winningest driver in NASCAR history, claiming 234 victories across all national divisions, including 4 wins right here at Michigan. A lot of the drivers in this race tonight grew up with and witnessed Kyle's career unfold as race fans, whether they loved him or hated him. And tonight they race, bounded by the love of racing and the ultimate passion behind the wheel that Kyle never let go through many weekends over many, many years. We race in honor of him tonight. Kyle is survived by his wife Samantha and his children Brexton and Lennox. Kyle Busch was 41 years old. Well, let's take you trackside and bring you tonight's starting grid here for the Forever Rowdy 300 as the drivers try their best to honor and remember Kyle Busch and put on a great race here from this virtual Michigan International Speedway. We're on the pole. James Kunkel for SKM Racing has the top spot of 37.948. Gets his Ford Mustang Dark Horse at the inside of the front row. Cedric Hunter, who's been close to winning here a few times, and on these 2-mile D-shaped oval tracks, his Toyota lines up on the outside, the 3-time winner, trying to make it number 4 as the only Toyota representative in this series. Charles Van Schaik rolls from inside of the top 3. Justin Erb on the outside of him in row number 2. Row 3 is where you'll find Warren Kyle Keith and Kip Easley joining us in a brand new number, 27. Usually runs the number 8, but is going to switch his number in honor of the passing of Kyle Busch. The 5 of Brandon Banks is the points leader entering tonight's affair. He rolls from 7th. Kevin Roy on the outside of him in his number 22 car is going to be in 8th place in row number 4. Jesse Whittington rolls from 9th. And Steven Stepien runs inside the top 10 on the outside of row number 5. Garrett Walden is 11th. Ethan Thompson on the outside. The DEP Racing Chevrolet finished 2nd at Kansas just not that long ago. He'll try to get another victory, or first victory for him, and a better finish as he's in 12th position to the green flag. Parker Bland rejoins us from the 13th spot. Jamal Pugh, the race winner from 2 weeks ago at Talladega Superspeedway, is in 14th place. Stephen Harlow in his number 6 Chevrolet is 15th. Chuck Stevens on the outside of him in position number 16. Row 9 will see a pair of drivers who are relatively veterans in this series. Richard Swavely back in 17th and Brad Fulham in the 18th spot. Dana Shepard for the DEP Racing team had a big hand in getting Jamal Pugh the first ever career victory for him. Jason Anderson on the outside rolls off from just the inside of the top 20. David Duran is the first driver not to set a qualifying time alongside him. Alex Muscarella for the SKM Racing team. Casey Knighton is the last driver, 23rd, here tonight from Michigan. You'll see a lot of drivers adorning the paint schemes that Kyle Busch made famous over the many years of his NASCAR stock car career, and some of the drivers even using decals made over the few weeks after his passing that have his numbers, 8, 18, 51, any number that he made famous on the roof of the race cars. The Droppin the Hammah Cup Series admins understanding the situation and in honor and remembrance of Kyle Busch, waiving their number rule to have Kyle's numbers on the top of almost each and every race car that you'll see here tonight. James Kunkel with a very big accomplishment being on the pole for this race from Michigan International Speedway, and not the first time that an SKM car is on the front row to begin, especially this season at tracks like these. Justin Erb and a few other SKM drivers ran up at the front very early on at Auto Club Speedway. We'll see if they can replicate some of that success early and try to parlay that into a relatively long race that we'll see over the course of tonight's affair. Take a look at our SKM.com race analysis tonight, where we go 150 laps here from Michigan, 300 miles from the Irish Hills. Drivers have 6 extra tire sets in the pits. And again, a reminder, we are racing the higher horsepower output tonight. So 110% given to the drivers. 670, the usual number. Of course, bumping that up to 737. That's been a topic of conversation through all of the intermediate tracks that we've seen this season, ever since Charlotte Motor Speedway, where they turned the power up for the All-Star race, then parlay that into the World 600-kilometer race, and then put that into Kansas as further proof that it could be a very fun package to drive. Mixed reviews from some of the drivers, though. You'll see some that really enjoy that format of racing, and others who are still gripping to terms with the new power that's below the hood of all of these NASCAR Cup Series cars. James Kunkel, of course, having all that power at the front, won't have any of the draft when we get this race started, but we have been told entering Turn 1 upwards of 213 miles an hour. You haven't seen that since the days of 12 to 13 years ago in NASCAR Gen 6 racing. We'll get an extra pace lap and do this all over again. So we'll go around one more time and get this one ready here from the virtual Michigan International Speedway. Again, the second time that we are here and taking turns at both of the sister tracks in both full seasons. Back in season 1, we ran Auto Club first and then went to Michigan. We did the same here in this campaign, having Auto Club as the premier first D-shaped 2-mile oval, and then going into the sunshine here in Michigan. Big difference. We saw the race at Auto Club be in relatively cool temperatures. Not the case tonight at Michigan. 114 degrees, winds blowing to the northwest at about 3 to 4 miles an hour. So very much a big difference in grip, and might be similar to the way Kansas has raced, in the way that it is very slick, going to be very fun to watch the drivers wrangle these race cars and be all up in arms about who can have the most grip if we end up seeing longer green flag stretches. It is the first career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series pole for James Kunkel in many of his tries throughout this series and in his career in what will be his 29th career start. The first time he gets to see the front row on the inside, and he will have control to begin this race. We're ready to honor Rowdy in many ways tonight with the racing you'll see here from Michigan. James Kunkel and Cedric Hunter on the front row. Green flag from Michigan. And a great opening statement by the 3-time winner this season, Cedric Hunter, weaving out in front. Justin Erb following in his train tracks, and James Kunkel, the pole sitter, having to just watch back as those two cars take advantage. Kunkel falls back to turn 3 in the third place position. Just waiting to see what kind of paragraphs these two kind of write up. Cedric Hunter remains in the top spot, taking control early as Justin Erb runs that high side. Again, we saw early laps led by Erb at Auto Club Speedway earlier on this season. Testament to how fast Erb has been on several different occasions this year. Texas Motor Speedway, another race that fell into the hands of Cedric Hunter late, was one where Justin did lead laps. And the Ford Mustang still trying to corral his first career, Droppin the Hammah Cup Series win. If he can do it tonight, he's got the teammate help and plenty of elbow room behind him, and behind James Kunkel as well. Kip Easley and Kevin Roy, they engage in combat for what will be 4th place. But Cedric Hunter leading the opening frame here at lap number 3 and stepping out in front. There's the points leader, Brandon Banks, just stepping into the top 10. We mentioned his start further out, and not seeing Jaden Porter here tonight. We mentioned those points right before we went to green flag racing. Only 3 separating Banks and Porter. We've seen that separate just a little bit off of the success of the South Carolina native and the HedgerCars.com Chevrolet with Kyle Busch's number 8 on the roof number, trying to make his way around Ethan Thompson. And what a successful start for DEP Racing. Already one race victory in their 3rd start as a group, overall work. You know, we've seen teams do plenty of great things, Drinking Bros Racing, SKM, and DTH to name a few, but DEP stepping onto the scene and getting Ethan Thompson in 2nd place. Jamal Pugh right behind him. A first career race victory with the help of another teammate, Dana Shepard, in that final white flag lap at Talladega Superspeedway. But it was great to see that team celebrate with all of the members there as James Kunkel weaves around, gets around his teammate for 2nd, and tries to look forward to mount a charge on the race leader down the back straightaway. Many different ways you can make lines around this virtual Michigan International Speedway. The onboard look with Kip Easley as James Kunkel makes a move from the high shelf, had the runoff of turn 4, and for the 2nd time tonight, James Kunkel takes the lead and regains control of lap 6. What a drive by Kunkel as he made a way around the outside. And now here comes Herb with a second chance at life, breathing back into the second place spot, following in the tracks of his teammate and making his move, now stepping underneath for third and then stepping underneath for the lead. And slides up in front. James Herb back to the control, or Justin Herb, James Kunkel back in second, and Herb maintaining control, lap 7. Hunter stays back, and they have attracted everyone else in this top 10. Easley, Roy, Van Schaik, and now a few others making their way into the group. So kind of a pit party, as you will. On the back straightaway, Justin Herb now the new race leader, and here comes Hunter back to the inside in the run for second. And SKM taking control. Kevin Roy steps out in a third, takes the high shelf. Justin Herb, the race leader. 3 rowdy cars and a lot of drivers making the move. Justin Herb loose off of turn 4. James Kunkel to the lead as we take on lap number 8 in honor of Kyle Busch. Still pushing green here in this Forever Rowdy 300. We continue to keep Kyle Busch and his family in our minds. Kevin Roy looking for the lead. Made a charge on James Kunkel at the exit of turn 4, but just could not complete the pass. Kip Easley has stepped into that third spot as Justin Herb with a big moment off turn 4 ended up traveling back to the 4th place spot. And Cedric Hunter, despite taking the lead in the opening few laps, has since stifled back into the top 10, dropping back to 9th. After a few cars had gone around the outside, and the Hello Kitty Toyota Camry makes a step back. Did drop through the top 10 in point standings, despite having the most wins of any driver this season at 3. But of course has tried to parlay some consistent runs, and some nights that have gone awry for him. Cedric Hunter, the winner at Charlotte last season, and then ended up doing it again at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the World 600. Had a rough going through the All-Star race, and then at Kansas a few weeks back, also having some setbacks and moments that caught him off guard and being involved in a pretty hefty incident by the end of all of that. Up front, James Kunkel under fire by his teammate, and it is the Combos Ford Mustang. Kevin Roy to the top spot at lap number 10. Quick move for the race lead. Teammate let each other go. And Kevin Roy to the point. Looking for any opportunity they can get to make a move up front. And with this higher horsepower output, it has become pretty difficult to make some passes. The dirty air has been talked about a lot by the drivers, and in what used to be more of a pack race here at Michigan, it has sort of settled down into more of a just try to be around each other, get clean air when you can, and then use the draft on the straightaways whenever possible. How about 3 wide? David Duran making a move up the top shelf. Brandon Banks on the inside. Warren Kyle Keith, they both nearly made contact, and the 2 cars wiggled down the back straightaway. Cedric Hunter took advantage of one to step back into 12th, and now shuffling under a switchover move in turns 3 and 4 to get under Keith for 11th. This is where the drama persists at the back half of this field. Of course, several drivers at the back of the group did not qualify tonight and did not put a time in. But all the drivers you're watching on screen, for the most part, did set a time in queue. Just either had struggles, or for the drivers like Cedric Hunter, qualified well, just has had a drop-off here in the early stage of this race. And Brendan Banks, unsurprisingly, making a move there, just trying to be conservative on his tires. However, a little surprising to see Brendan Banks this far back in this field, and also the same for Cedric Hunter. We like to see them as those comers and goers, drivers who usually work their way up to the front of the field by the time the tire run bleeds dry. For plenty of guys who use it up too early, However, to the tune of two of the best drivers in this series right now, they have not found some of that similar success early on. It's Roy up in front. James Kunkel right behind. The SKM teammates continue to lead the way. 1, 2, 4, and 5. As they come back around to turns 3 and 4, there's Stephen Harlow making a move underneath. And Steven Stepien, fellow teammate of Harlow, just watching on in the background, just waiting for that 20 machine to move out of the way. And Stepien trying to weave his way underneath, the driver who won at the 2-mile oval at Auto Club Speedway earlier on this season. We found a trend going into this race that Steven Stepien has led the most laps among any active driver in the series at 66 at both Michigan and Auto Club. The pair of races we've run in Southern California and the one race we've ran at Michigan before tonight's affair. So if Stepien can get back to the front, we'll just continue the trend. Sideways is David Duran, trouble off of turn 2, saving it on the back straightaway. What a save by David Duran, and will stay green. Not the first time we've seen heroics like that from Duran, but he holds on to the Chevrolet and will continue on here for Michigan. Second look again, yearning for clean air, taking a move up high, and whether that was a car that just unraveled from him or whether it was a checkup trying to get underneath Stepien, but raveling through the bumps. What a save at high speed. David Duran making sure that car didn't step out from underneath him and create any sort of trouble. He'll bleed track position, but the car doesn't go sideways. Take a look. Not easy to save these NASCAR Cup Series cars at that kind of speed. Just unfathomable from David Duran, who has since dropped back to the 18th spot, but continues to remain alive in this race. Kevin Roy has fallen back. James Kunkel has retaken the lead at lap number 17 as Kip Easley makes his move underneath and an attempt to get his Chevrolet into the top spot for the first time tonight. And we've seen Kip Easley over the last few seasons and even into 2026, the early portions of it, running the 8 that Kyle Busch has retained at Richard Childress Racing over the last few years since signing with them in 2023. But of course, since Kyle's tragic passing, a life cut too short, Easley, who is repping the 8 for a majority of his DTH Cup Series career, has decided to change numbers in honor. So he has gone from 8 to 27, a brand new number. That's the Jason Anderson Racing font that Easley is running tonight in a very quick start. Tires working well underneath for the Chevrolet, and the bow tie slithers underneath, and a chance for the race lead for the first time tonight at lap 18, coming to 19, Kip Easley. Nosing ahead, Kunkel fights back, and a bit of help from some teammates in the background. Parker Bland into a race-high 4th, and Kevin Roy just waiting back a few car lengths. And again, big difference to what we saw in last season's Michigan affair. Plenty of high-intensity pack racing, similar to what you'll see at a Talladega, Daytona, and even now the Echo Park Speedway. But with the advent of this next-gen car, and even with the brand-new power updates that have been added to these cars from the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series admins since the recent iRacing update, it has enabled more separation in the group. And we saw a ton of that in a very green race at Auto Club Speedway. That's how Cedric Hunter was able to be back in the background. Oh, there's contact for the lead, and they're spinning around. Easley and Kunkel go spinning on the front straightaway. First yellow comes around at lap 20, and the leaders collide. That was not the situation needed for Kunkel or for Kip Easley. The two leaders go sliding at the exit of turn 4. We mentioned separation key with this new power and these aerodynamic updates on the next-gen car. And Easley just washed up too high. Tried to get a little close to Kunkel, side draft him on the front straightaway. They touch, and as soon as they tangle, it takes them a ride through the grass. Didn't hit the wall, either of them, and didn't run back up into traffic. But for the two drivers fighting for the lead, their run up to keep the lead is going to be a tough route, as Kevin Roy will assume the race lead for the first caution of this race on lap 20. So the field coming on pit road for the first time tonight, relatively wholesale service. For the leaders, Kevin Roy up in the front and Parker Bland right behind. A race-high second for Parker Bland, and she has made some progression at the front of this field after qualifying through the top 10 and 15. Bland has now been able to slide into a position where she can try and take control. SKM Sim Racing so far, and that SKM team rather, has been doing well for themselves as we have looked over it so far. And the run for the race lead off of pit road. Kevin Roy will have the 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles. Quick stop from Parker Bland, but outside goes Roy. Steven Stempien looking to take the runner-up spot as soon as they come off the lane, and he does so. Moves Steven Stempien to the second place spot off of pit road. Kevin Roy retains the lead. And all of them on a 4-tire Goodyear Eagle call. Just a bit faster for Steven Stempien to squeeze by Parker Bland and the entry to the top 2. Highest we've seen Steven Stempien run all night long. There's one of those very famous Kyle Busch paint schemes from a good portion of his career. That's the Interstate Batteries Chevrolet that Steven Stempien is running with tonight in the Interstate Batteries car that Kyle, of course, ran a good portion of his career in his run with Joe Gibbs Racing. And same for the other sponsors that are around him. Top 3 all running Rowdy Busch paint schemes in one way or another. Kevin Roy, that combos Ford Mustang, colors that he drove with, Busch did in his time with Joe Gibbs Racing in the 18 car, and the same with the Pedigree car. One that a lot of Kyle Busch fans claim to be cursed was the Pedigree machine, because whenever he would run the Pedigree machine, more often than not, he would not win. At least in terms of the modern era of running Pedigree sponsorship. Parker Bland running with the Pedigree car tonight, and we'll roll off from the inside of road number 2. The teammates will work together. Ethan Thompson, who is now in the top 5 for the first time tonight, brings his number 99 Chevrolet into the top 5. And Stephen Harlow on the inside of him, that's row number 3. Seen plenty of high-intensity action, lots of separation very early on, and difference in tire running. Of course, Cedric Hunter, very early step up in the beginning portions of the race, fell back to the top 13 and has recovered to 8th as we get back to the green flag. And the same for Brandon Banks, who has now recovered back into the top 10 after he also got shuffled out of line into the top 15. And the points leader, of course, trying to extend his margin on Jaden Porter, who is not in appearance tonight from the Brooklyn, Michigan racetrack. So we'll get ready for the first green flag restart tonight at lap number 23 of 150. Kevin Roy at the head of this group. Steven Stempien to react on the outside. We've seen Stempien take early control off of restarts exactly like this one, but so far SKM has answered the call. They have been in the lead for a majority of this race across 2, now 3 different drivers, with Kevin Roy on the front row. Pace cars down, looking for the restart zone. An early jump from Kevin Roy. Back to the green from Michigan. A great drive by Roy, steps him up in front, has to wiggle, shakes up the race car off turn 2. And here comes Stempien, pushing him down the back straightaway, nearly clearing Bland. Bland is back to the inside, but so is Stempien. We're 3 wide for the lead. Like we saw in that early green flag run, track position, oh so important. So you wouldn't be surprised to see plenty of the drivers at the front be aggressive for as much track position as they can garner. And it's Stempien, the first Chevrolet, in the top 3. Ethan Thompson right behind. And then Stempien's teammate, Stephen Harlow, not too far back in the top 5. Parker Bland still on the inside, struggling to get through. Finally thought about clearing. Charles Van Schaik in the way, still side by side for at least 5th place. And it's Stempien hoping he can bustle his way through to the top spot and lead his 67th lap at these 2-mile D-shaped ovals. The onboard look from the second place runner. See Stempien looking that inside line as Kevin Roy, much like James Kunkel earlier on in the first run, had utilized that high side to his advantage so far, but the DTH Chevrolet in Stempien has not been able to gain any ground on Roy. That distance has extended now to at least 3 car lengths back to turn 1 at a 0.3 of a second gap, as Thompson has moved his way into third, and Parker Bland finally got in line in front of Charles Van Schaik. Got a little scary there for the 26 machine. She had an opportunity to make a move on the outside of the back straightaway a few laps ago, but Van Schaik closed the door until it opened back up again, and Bland was able to settle herself right in the middle of all that. Cedric Hunter, who was an early dropper from the beginning of this race, has now recovered nicely, has stepped into the top 7, and now peaking on what is the developing battle between Van Schaik, Hunter, and now Stephen Harlow and Parker Bland. So a 4 to 5 car train that we could see build up in the next few laps as Hunter attempts to gain back control of tonight's affair from Michigan. And we've seen Hunter lead a lot of laps and be one of the better drivers, especially on the long run. We talk about Iowa as one of the most impressive runs by any driver in this series, and that's because tires were blowing. We had plenty of guys who still finished in the top 10, Perusini, Warren, Kyle Keith, you name a few guys that came down pit road because they didn't have any tire life left underneath them. So they came in, they went a lap down, they regained control as other drivers pitted because of their old set of Goodyear Eagles. Cedric Hunter was one of the few who just stuck it out all the way through and was able to have enough tire left and pace to be able to win the race entirely. So you wouldn't be surprised if Hunter is able to step forward on a long green flag run, especially now in this new era of higher horsepower output at these intermediate tracks, something that some of the admin team have been very excited about ever since it got implemented into the sim. And as they have tested through the likes of Charlotte Motor Speedway in the longest race of the season, and then under the skies and hot temperatures at Kansas and America's Heartland not too long ago, still experimenting well with what works and what doesn't with adding horsepower to the next-gen car. But one thing the drivers do love is seeing 200-plus miles an hour entering the first turn and in the draft. There's the onboard look with Stempien as he tries to hold off Bland, who has resurged into the top 3. And almost similar to how we saw the developing first run end up, in which top 3 or 4 cars separate. The rest of the group is just amongst themselves in the mid-pack, and the leader is able to step out in front by a considerable margin without having much defense to play, given that second and third stuck in the aero wash. And we've seen that become a lot of drivers' main topics when it comes to developing, setting up a pass on the racetrack in the next-gen era, regardless of the amped-up power or not. So far, SKM, the most dominant performance we have seen from this group tonight since probably Texas Motor Speedway, where Warren Kyle Keith had developed a shot at the front and then took the lead. Justin Erb had laps at the front before those two eventually collided and then opened up the seas by the end of it for Cedric Hunter to win on a late race restart. But SKM across the board have been able to really step out in a nice way and do what they can to be able to lead some laps, step out in front, and even through longer green flag stretches, they haven't fully gone away. They've been able to be in the right place at the right time. And at the moment, Kevin Roy putting on a show. After only leading 30 laps in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career prior to tonight's race, he has led a good chunk of this opening stretch. And now Parker Bland, fellow teammate of Roy, is starting to plan up a charge on Steven Stempien, who's been faithfully running the bottom. Parker Bland has been with him so much through this run, but Stempien has been a couple of times loose at the exit of the corner, so a potential chance for Bland to make a move, although a developing charge from behind. Thompson, Harlow, Van Schaik, and a few others still single file. First side-by-side action you will see in this field is Brandon Banks riding around where James Kunkel and David Durand are. We saw Durand make that whale of a save at the exit of this corner here, turn 2, and was able to hold on to the race car, got the blessing of the yellow flag to go his way, and has been able to recover into the top 15. Hasn't necessarily squeaked back into the top 10 yet. However, Durand, a promising rookie driver, we've seen him on some good runs this season, trying to continue a streak of solid finishes, especially on these intermediate tracks where he ran pretty well at Kansas for himself and also ran well at Charlotte Motor Speedway to give an extra boost. So single file throughout most of the drivers at the front of this field, as Bland continues to develop a higher run on Steven Stempien, but just has not been able to make a proper step underneath or over the 88 Chevrolet. And what an impressive start to the season for the driver right behind Parker Bland and Ethan Thompson. A fantastic start to his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career. Ended up with a career-high second-place finish at America's Heartland in Kansas. And ever since, with his DEP Racing team, has definitely improved and has continued to put on good drafts and good races over the last few. Riding on board with his Chevrolets, the top three have now crunched up together and looking for an entryway into the top three for the first time tonight. Only Thompson's third career Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series start. Wasn't there for the Talladega Super Speedway race just a few weeks ago. Saw his team get to victory, but Thompson just was not a part of the group. Oh, there may have been connection issues with Ethan Thompson. So as soon as we talk about him, we saw his camera go away at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Connection problems for Thompson, and he is out of this race at lap 35. That's a bizarre scenario for Thompson. And he'll relinquish fourth place. So that'll give that fourth spot to the Droppin' the Hammah Chevrolet of Stephen Harlow, who steps into the top five for the first time tonight as we continue to run green. Few other drivers that are adorning the colors of Kyle Busch and paint schemes that he's made famous over his illustrious and long career. There's Garrett Walden, rookie driver, who is in the top five in standings, third entering tonight's affair, and the highest placed rookie in the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series standings for 2026. A very impressive start for the 43 car, who usually has the Walmart colors in white and blue on his Chevrolet, but of course in honor of Kyle Busch and remembering him. He's got the Kellogg's paint scheme that Kyle made famous in the very early days of his Cup Series career, with Hendrick Motorsports driving that iconic neon yellow and blue number 5 car. Won a lot with that paint scheme, and Walden hoping his first career win can come tonight from Michigan in those Kyle Busch colors. He runs 17th right now, trailing behind Jesse Whittington, the driver who is in that white and blue Chevrolet up in front. Shady Rays represented on his car. And someone who is making his return to this specific iRacing group after having some time away in the advent of the fall of the Sunoco Cup Series and the beginning of this Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series campaign back in 2025. So we continue to run green here from Michigan. Again, 150 laps, it's on the tap, 300 miles, and we haven't seen a proper green flag stretch go into green flag pit stop territory. However, with the field that we do have tonight and the fuel number given to the drivers, the 6 extra set of tires will help, of course, in these relatively hot track conditions. But with the way we've seen the fuel window go in, we're looking probably at around 40 to 45 laps on a green flag stint. Of course, our first yellow flag coming relatively early at around lap 20, so we didn't get a proper chance to see things develop for those that were looking for a green flag stop, but that could be in effect later on tonight on the 19th lap of a green flag stint upcoming. Battle for the lead in turn 1. Stempien has found a way to get to Kevin Roy, and this time trying to plan to get around him. At the exit of turn 2, makes himself clear. Steven Stempien to the race lead for the first time tonight from Michigan. What a drive from Stempien. Roy falls 1, and then he falls 2. Parker Bland to the outside, slips away into second place. And the battle for fourth heating up. Charles Van Schaik, Stephen Harlow, now Kevin Roy going to be invited into the party. And the 67th lap for Steven Stempien, led at tracks named Auto Club in Michigan, is right here, right now. Stempien wanting to sweep both of the 2-mile D-shaped oval tracks, getting sideways there at the exit of turn 2 as Parker Bland tried to deal some air on the rear spoiler. Here comes Kevin Roy and Charles Van Schaik making a move inside for second. Oh, and Harlow sideways at the exit of turn 4, 3 wide for position behind as Cedric Hunter through the middle try to get underneath the combos for the Mustang of Kevin Roy. And we mentioned the tire fall off hasn't been in effect until this moment. Roy has been very faithful to the high side of the racetrack, and he's paying the price with the right rear tire. Harlow making a move underneath and slips into the top 5 position. These are plenty drivers that are in this top 5 that have not won a drop in the Hammah Cup Series race. Stepien, of course, has 3 career race victories, 2 coming this season at Echo Park Speedway and then Auto Club. And Cedric Hunter, a 3-time winner this season. Charles Van Schaik, Stephen Harlow, Kevin Roy among those that have not been able to get to victory lane just yet. Trouble for Parker Bland, sideways off turn 4. She saves it. But there was apparent trouble. Bled a ton of spots at the back end of turn 4. And her car all out of sorts, able to hold on to the racing machine, and will stay green for now. So we'll take a look at what happened to this pedigree Ford Mustang. And we mentioned the aero pack situation that happened to Steven Stepien, as Bland was running behind Stepien. But Bland, what a save. She usually knows how to keep a car sideways from spinning around full-heartedly, and does a great job at holding on to her Ford Mustang. She does bleed position, but good news is car's not damaged, and she is able to continue on the racetrack. So a great save. Second time we have seen one of those types of saves, especially with Duran being the first off of turn 2, and now Parker Bland at the exit of turn 4. Stepien in the lead, Charles Van Schaik up to second. We saw a really good start for Van Schaik earlier on in this campaign, a driver who joins this series, a part of a relatively new team that is still trying to make a name for themselves, but over the last few starts, only one top 10 in his last 3, and that broke up what was a 3-race top 10 streak where he finished 2nd, 8th, and 3rd through Kentucky, Texas, and then Auto Club Speedway, where he did finish on the podium to the eventual race winner of Steven Stepien. So maybe not the first time that we get to see these drivers go at it with each other, at least for top running position on a 2-mile track. Cedric Hunter, the same deal. One of the best average finishes of anyone that you'll see on these types of tracks, an average finish of 2.7. So someone over the few starts who has been relatively impressive, and this season popping up to be a championship favorite as he runs in that 3rd spot. And they remain trying to chase Steven Stepien at the front of this field. Entering this race, he had led the most laps of anyone this season with 412. And that also ended up with a 196 lap led night at the Echo Park Speedway. One of the most dominant performances we've seen in this series' history, and trying to go for career win number 4. And would it be the first time that we see Chevrolets dominate and be able to sweep both of the 2-mile tracks, especially here at Michigan, known to be the manufacturer's home, whether it is Chevrolet, Ford, and a few other of the GM manufacturers. Of course, IndyCar running at Detroit earlier on this afternoon, right next to the home of General Motors and Chevrolet. And Lawson Peel made the bow tie very proud with Drinkin' Bros Racing last season, winning both Auto Club and Michigan in strategy races that ended up in a 1-on-1 duel. Auto Club was against Cedric Hunter, Michigan was against Jaden Porter, and while Stepien necessarily hasn't had a 1-on-1 fight with anyone yet at these types of tracks, he dominated the later portions of Auto Club and trying to do the same here at Michigan. A big dive from Van Schaik, you can tell, trying to get loose and trying to get Stepien out of shape, but has not been able to shake this Methuen, Massachusetts native, with Cedric Hunter not too far behind. Only a few drivers that have really made some moves as 3 wide in the middle of this top 10. There's that Taco Bell Chevrolet of Jason Anderson, HenderCars.com Chevrolet of Brandon Banks, and David Duran. We talked about them being on the outskirts of the top 10 for a while. They have since regenerated their runs and now allowing them to move on through. So good to see them start to make some of that forward progress. Warren Kyle Keith up in front alongside Jamal Pugh running in that 6th and 7th spot. And Pugh getting off of the biggest high of his drop in the Hammah Cup Series career, a first career W at Talladega Superspeedway, help from his teammate Dana Shepard, and what a moment it was for Jamal and that entire DEP Racing team. You know, we have talked a lot on iRacing about teams that have been so impressive, being able to get into a league and immediately be successful. DEP Racing has done just that. They added Dana Shepard, Ethan Thompson, and then Jamal Pugh most recently into the mix, and being relatively late signees to this regular season, but still being allowed into the group. And as Thompson, as we aforementioned, getting second at Kansas, a huge high note for that team. And then, of course, Jamal getting that first career victory in just his second career start. Just a magical moment for Jamal and riding that high of momentum as he tries to pick up another top 10 and do so here from Michigan as the top three continue to roll with each other as we continue tonight's race and impartially trying to look for a bit of green flag strategy as this race continues to unfold. We'll have more coverage of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series here from Michigan in just a few moments. You're watching coverage live on the KBueno Racing Network.
This baby hits 88 miles per hour. You're gonna see some serious...
They say rap's king. They wanna know how I feel and even when I was close to defeat, I rose to my feet. Taking my time to perfect the beat, and I still got love in the streets.
Welcome to the Thousand Islands Cruette in Clayton, New York. We're open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Come in for a tasting and our helpful and knowledgeable staff will help you find the perfect olive oils or vinegars to add that perfect touch to your next meal. We have monthly specials and sales as well as new pairings and recipes, so there's always something new to try when you visit. The Thousand Islands Cruette on James Street in Clayton. And don't forget, hey, no touchy the tankies.
Let's go. What's up? Yo, what's up, Kenneth? How's it going, man? How are you? Good. How you been? What you got in the bag, man?
I got a panini. I have a hoagie. I got it all through the Wall Rewards app.
You can order it all through the app?
You can order it all through the app.
I can order it all through the app. The world is my oyster! By placing your order on the Wawa app, you can pick up at any time with ultimate satisfaction. Gotta have a Wawa. Back live from the virtual Michigan International Speedway as we continue this Forever Rowdy 300 in honor and remembrance of NASCAR legend Kyle Busch. You're watching the battle for the lead right now, 1, 2, and 3, Steven Stepien, Charles Van Schaik, and Cedric Hunter. Although several others have been invited into the mix, Stephen Harlow running in 4th. For the Droppin' the Hammah team, Kevin Roy and Warren Kyle Keith, two teammates going to battle off of turn 4. That's in the position for the 5th spot. As Warren Kyle Keith attempted to move on the outside, then on the inside, didn't necessarily work on his teammate, and will continue on through there. It's been great to have you with us on the KBueno Racing Network. Kenneth Bueno with you in the broadcast booth. We had a great battle for second, developing a few laps ago and still relatively under the cards. Cedric Hunter has been trying to weave his way around this SpongeBob Goat Racing die-cast Ford Mustang of Charles Van Schaik, and has been relatively using the bottom, just hasn't been able to fully clear, and all in the while maintaining control to be within at least 0.3 of a second of Steven Stepien, the current race leader. Some great fights developing through the course of this field. How about all of this back for 12th place? Garrett Walden at the back end of that bright yellow and blue Chevrolet. James Kunkel, former race leader. That blue Wendy's car of Brad Fulham on the inside, following Easley's tracks. And Kunkel getting a piece, brushing the outside wall. Inside goes Walden, and taking a 2-for-1 there off of turn 4. What a great move by Garrett Walden to make his way on through. So again, we talk about honoring Kyle Busch and remembering him tonight. And of course, many of the drivers in this series getting into the remembrance. And a lot of that from the roof numbers that you're seeing tonight, whether it be 51, 18, 8, all the numbers that Kyle has made famous and has run throughout his NASCAR career. All adorning for many of the teams. SKM going full send into remembering Kyle in many different ways. All of their cars have been shown at least once tonight. There's Richard Swabley in his number 32 Ditech.com Ford Mustang, another paint scheme that Kyle ran relatively early in his career in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, and the site of his first win when he did drive a Ditech.com Chevrolet Silverado back in those days. Kyle with 4 career wins here at the virtual Michigan International Speedway. Well, that was in real life, hasn't done it virtually, but has won races here at MIS. Won in the Cup Series back in 2011, pair of O'Reilly Auto Parts victories, and of course, 2 Craftsman Truck Series victories here at the 2-mile D-shaped oval, and the only driver in NASCAR history to have won at least one race at every single track on the NASCAR calendar back in around 2018 and 19. So Kyle, of course, in the minds of everyone here at the KBueno Racing Network and with everyone here at the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, as they have put on a very good show tonight. Only one caution in this affair. That was contact between Kip Easley and James Kunkel. They went sailing into the grass off of turn 4. Had the field come down pit road, but we have not had a yellow since. And although we've had relatively close calls throughout the race, David Duran being one, exit of turn 2, Parker Bland being one, exit of turn 4, we have remained under the green flag up until this point at lap 59. And while the drivers have approached lap 40 on their stint, it means that we should, relatively soon, start seeing green flag pit stops emerge into the conversation. Now, this is where Steven Stepien really made his money at Auto Club earlier on in this campaign, was able to stretch it out amongst everybody in the field, be able to master that strategy call. And what has really become important at these types of tracks, Lawson Peel got his pair of wins at Auto Club and Michigan by the strategy, just by being the right car at the right place and making the correct decision compared to everyone else in the field. So far, no major takers here at lap number 60, still awaiting some of those drivers to eventually make their first green flag stop. Charles Van Schaik, who was in the top 2, falling back through the top 5 as Stephen Harlow makes a move underneath, a relatively quick stop. And Warren Kyle Keith, who has been relatively silent in this race. We haven't seen Warren all too much tonight, repping the NOS Energy colors that Kyle made famous in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and won a ton of races in these colors in his Toyota Supra and Camry. But Warren running a clean race tonight, still searching for win number 1. And usually we like to see Warren pushing hard at the front of this field and always making the headlining moves 3 and 4 wide, not afraid to put his car where a lot of drivers would be. But Warren taking it a little more conservative this race. And although he's been a little silent tonight, he has still been effective at working his way through the field. And really the first time that we see the St. Augustine, Florida native in the top 5 in this race. Still waiting the green flag pit stops for a majority of this field. And that, of course, includes the running for the race lead, which is starting to come down to a close fight. 1 car length, now less than that. Cedric Hunter with a great run off of turn 4. Tried to weave his way underneath, deal some air to the rear spoiler of Stepien's machine. No doing there in turn 2. So that gap sits again at around 0.2 of a second. We've seen it accordion a couple of times tonight, especially with Charles Van Schaik. It will go up to about 3 or 4/10 of a second, crawl back down to at least a car length, and then open back up in the middle of these corners. And that's when we talk about the dynamic nature of this Michigan Speedway, and the same that can be said for the sister track over in Southern California. And what we learned from Auto Club Speedway and the lessons from that night was that you got to be the best at both things. You got to be really good at drafting, of course, using that to your advantage on the back straightaway, and then, of course, the very long and fast front straightaway, but also being disciplined enough to carry your tires through the corners. So you get the most of intermediate and super speedway racing, although with the recent updates, it has enabled for more of an intermediate style of track and a driving style that will compare to the likes of Charlotte and Kansas. Those two back-to-back mile and a half. So a spinner off turn 4. It's Warren Kyle Keith. We saw him in the top 5, had a spill off of the final corner, and was able to save it. It was under the racing line, so we will not get a yellow flag. He's still spinning through the grass. And it was all by himself. We mentioned tires wearing, hot track surface, separation on the racetrack, and the higher horsepower output. Keith getting caught out by it at the exit of 4, going for a spill at the exit of turn 4. And much like Easley and Kunkel, getting around right at that portion of the racetrack and not being able to save it. Although this time it doesn't bring out the yellow, and we will stay green. So a dagger for Warren Kyle Keith, falling back to 19th, as we'll get our first green flag pit stops of the night. Jason Anderson is in this time at lap 65. And will we get any calls from the leaders? The answer so far is no, but Keith is eventually going to make his green flag stop. And so is Stephen Harlow, taking it all the way. Contact! Spinning around is Keith, entering pit road. And that's some big-time drama between the two. Harlow was pitting from the top 5 and got into Warren Kyle Keith as they were entering pit lane. Of course, Keith falling a lap down as a result of his spin, and now even more damage to his night. Here's an onboard look from Harlow. This was just overcooking. Not sure if he got a pit road speeding penalty, but just punted Keith at the entry of the pit lane. And we can imagine Keith is not going to be happy about that. He has fallen a lap down from the leaders. And here's another onboard look. Taking it easy on entry. Harlow was coming in hot. And that's just more than enough of momentum to send that number 24 machine around sideways. He is in on pit road this time by, although it's going to be at the cost of a ton of track position, and now a full lap behind the race leaders that could develop into 2 laps down before this is all said and done. And the caution comes out this time by, so as the leaders were waiting for a chance to weave on through, the yellow has come out again. Only our second yellow of the night, lap 68. As Richard Swavely made his trip down pit road. And that could be a poor sign as the pits were closed. But Cedric Hunter and Steven Stepien were just about to engage in combat. And all of a sudden, that yellow brings us to a break right around the near halfway mark of tonight's race in the Forever Rowdy 300. Let's see if we can get a look at what inspired the yellow flag for coming out here. And if there was a lot of trouble around any portion of the field. But it didn't look like any drivers got sideways off of the corner. Perhaps some trouble as drivers were coming off of pit road. Well, this is at the moment where Kevin Roy, Kip Easley, a few others were blending back into the racing line, and it seems relatively good. Oh, it might have been right there. Ethan Thompson just nearly disconnecting and coming to a dead stop on the back straightaway, so the yellow flag may have come out for that, as Thompson, who had connection issues, dropped him a lap behind the leaders earlier on in the affair, resurged in this race, but now at the cost of now bringing out this most recent yellow flag. Second time tonight we see the caution period come out. Stepien will bring the entire field in. And like we saw on lap number 20, looks like wholesale service for what is the longest green flag run we have had tonight at 47 green flag laps. And Stepien, who is now easily led over 70 to 80 laps at Michigan and Auto Club in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career. Now looking for a 4 fresh tire stop. The rest of the field will come in. Bit of an awkward line for Garrett Waldman, but he's in nonetheless as Stepien makes his way out. 4 fresh tires and some fuel. Quick stop for Stepien. Cedric Hunter tries to follow. Charles Van Schaik beating him to the lane. And a 3-way fight for second on a 2-tire call. No, just a 4-tire call for Jesse Whittington, Jamal Pugh, and a few others to step out in front. What a stop. There's Whittington, yellow lights flashing from his sim rig, but what a stop, 14.8 seconds. And with the placement of the pit stall for car number 94, the Cypress Racing Academy Chevrolet is able to make some waves at the front. And Charles Van Schaik alongside Whittington will have a chance to remain in the top 5 on a relatively great pit stop for him and rookie Jamal Pugh, both of them being able to get into the top 5 for the first time tonight off of the pit stop. Let's see if we can get a chance to talk to the current race leader in Steven Stepien. Steven, you got a copy?
Kenneth, how you doing, buddy?
All right, doing good. How you doing, man? So we've got a good restart right now, building up. Second caution flag of the race, took the lead, and you felt comfortable at this moment. What has the car felt like so far for you?
Pretty good. You know, just managing the tires. There's a lot of tire wear, and just trying to keep it smooth and consistent every lap, and you know, keep these guys behind me, dump some air on them, and just keep them behind me. But I don't mind if everybody starts going, because it seems like these guys want to go race to the front, and I'm just, you know, hanging, waiting, and taking it easy on my stuff. So just trying to get to 150 and see what happens.
Well, part of the strategy of keeping it easy and having a fast race car in the long run got you the win at Auto Club Speedway earlier this season. Is there any similarity you can carry from that into tonight, or maybe you have carried already into this race?
Yeah, I mean, I made the comment to the team, you know, it feels like Auto Club. You know, just gotta take it easy for a while and let you know, you can start going when everybody else wore out the stuff. So same mindset, and just hope to stay out of trouble. It's been a rough season for getting into trouble this season. So.
All right, Steven, best of luck here on the restart, and a great paint scheme as well.
Thank you, buddy.
Steven Stepien leading the field back to green off of our second caution flag of the night in this Forever Rowdy 300. Lap 71, we'll see the Interstate Battery Chevrolet bring us back under full song. Great restart from the inside lane and pushing all around. Jesse Whittington a nudge from Cedric Hunter, the pink Toyota Camry on the inside. Battle for second into turn 1. Hunter has some more fire. Will he take control in turn 3? Taking the inside at the entry of the corner. Whittington not too far behind, and Jamal Pugh stepping underneath Charles Van Schaik. Now Hunter's got to run. He'll peek to the bottom of Steven Stepien. No help down the straightaway. It's Chevrolet's on top. Toyota on the bottom. Hunter posing a move. Hunter nosing ahead. Cedric Hunter to the race lead for the first time since the opening lap from Michigan. And Jesse Whittington able to take second. And again, in the words of Stepien, just trying not to be too panicky about what happens. Oh, there's trouble. Charles Van Schaik must have had some issues there. He's crashed into the inside wall. Turn 3. Not sure if that will bring out the yellow. Will stay green for now. Cedric Hunter up in command by nearly half a full second. And Charles Van Schaik's night has done. And it has come to a quick end. There's Pugh on the inside. Van Schaik troubled to get back going, and a torn up race car. But he will not get the grace of the yellow flag. And we'll stay green for now. There's Brandon Banks into the top 5 for the first time tonight. And the Myrtle Beach native has struggled to move through the field for a good portion of tonight's race. The points leader again, taking advantage of an absent Jaden Porter. And only 3 points to the clear of that 82 car entering tonight's race. Banks hoping to lead a few more laps and try and add on another win to his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career. And to think of one of the most dominant drivers of the season only having one win, and that was when we started the campaign at Daytona in the World Center of Racing. Now we're starting to see this 5-car come alive, taking a charge underneath Jesse Whittington as David Duran and Stephen Harlow run single file. Plenty of Chevrolets at the back end of this top 5. Cedric Hunter now in the lead and in command by a solid half a full second. Let's try and get a look at what happened to Charles Van Schaik a few laps ago. And not sure whether this was a mechanical failure or what, but this is a car that just stepped out of line. And you watch here off of turn number 2, just seems like business as usual. And then bam, car starts to jut immediately to the left. That looks like a potential hardware issue and just goes sailing into the tire barriers at the entry of turn 3. A hellacious crash off of the back straightaway. But of course, all of that is under that yellow line. So iRacing Race Control does not deem that a yellow flag. Let's get another look with Van Schaik. Take a listen in. You see the gas come off. Car is not in control. Not sure if there was a display issue for Van Schaik. We've seen plenty of those technical difficulties where screens have gone missing. And whether you get black or blue screens for some drivers in their sim rigs, it has enabled them to not see anything on the racetrack and then, of course, create scenarios like that where they just cannot see what's going on or they just don't have any input behind the wheel. And an unfortunate end to the night for Charles Van Schaik. Didn't look intentional at all from the 23's perspective. And a hardware gremlin is what's going to take that GOAT Racing die-cast Ford Mustang out with 74 laps to go. Harlow making a move around. Brandon Banks for 5th. Duran has stepped into the top 4. All while sort of putting up a run on Jesse Whittington, who has kept in arm's reach of Stepien, who has remained in 2nd. We have seen these two kind of squabble a couple times this season, but Whittington is knowing better than to go underneath Stepien right now. You look on board with the 94 machine, you could just see him pushing Stepien down the front straight. That was upward of 210 miles an hour, entering turn 1 at full song. And while they have let Cedric Hunter pull away to the tune of 0.6 of a second, it could just relatively be a matter of saving tire. Of course, we ended up in that longest green flag run of the night earlier on before that second yellow came through for Ethan Thompson stopping on the back straightaway apron. But Stepien, again, told us it might be the same mindset for a lot of the other drivers, especially behind this 88 Chevrolet. Play it easy in the first few, see how the tires feel, don't push it too hard. And then, when the long green flag run initially comes in, and that's when you start to make that push to the front of this field. Now, if there's anyone that you want to go up against on a long green flag run for an ultimate test, it's going to be Cedric Hunter in clean air for the first time since the opening frame, where he led the first few and then dropped to as low as about 13th on the racetrack. But if anyone knows how to save tire and perform well in long green flag runs when they extend, it's this man right here, the Cedric Hunter, the Canadian driver, and the only representative of Canada at the front of this field right now, and one of 2 Canadian drivers that are in the midst of this field. Brad Fulham back in 17th, also a fellow Canadian, and running back in that 17th spot behind Kip Easley and a few other of the lead lap drivers. Trying to fight for the SKM Lucky Dog with Warren, Kyle Keith, and just a heap of cars that are in the middle of this group around the top 10. There's Richard Swavely trying to get some help from Chuck Stevens on the inside of the racetrack. That red, white, and blue Chevrolet in honor of Kyle Busch with that 8 on the top end of the car. And even the 8 in the RCR font that Kyle drove for the last few years on the left and right sides of his Chevrolet. Tries to wash up there off of turn 4, and Swavely with a great run. We've got at least 5 to 6 cars that are in this one fell swoop. It's a mix of lap machines and not. Of course, we mentioned Fulham and Keith trying to go for that SKM Lucky Dog. They are nose to tail, so a potential chance for them to engage in a one-on-one scenario. And in the hopes that a yellow flag can come out that does not involve them, they can get that Lucky Dog and be right on their way back to the lead lap. Here comes Keith pivoting and firing to the inside, trying to get around another teammate of his in that Richard Swavely machine in that 32 car. And we'll continue on. 69 laps to go, and lots of great battles throughout the back end of the top group. There's Garrett Walden under fire from a fellow Chevrolet, Kip Easley on the inside. We saw Easley in the top 2, ran for the lead before getting into James Kunkel. And ever since that crash to bring out the first yellow of the night, it has not been an easy one to bear for not only Kip Easley, but for Kunkel that's riding all the way back in 14th place. We have not seen them crack the top 10 pretty much since that spill. And up until now, that has really changed for some of them. Easily and Swavely going at it for 9th and 10th off of turn 4. Easily coming into this race with a few top 10s to his credit. His most recent top 10 finish was in the longest race of the season at Charlotte Motor Speedway, where he ran from that 16th spot to the 10th running position. And despite a very good qualifying effort at Talladega Superspeedway, they got him on the outside of the front row. And just wasn't able to parlay that into a good finish, especially as the chaos rung in through the back half with 15 to go, and under ended up 17th at the cross of the start-finish line. But we know Kip Easley has a lot of pace. We know back to Iowa, kept in with the race leader for a good chunk of the first run, and at several tracks, this car and this driver has surprised many and has performed well. So you can never really keep your wits about you with Kip Easley. You can't count him out by any stretch of the imagination. A driver that can and is able to move his way to the front, although he's just relatively stuck in traffic right now. There's most of that single file train down the back straightaway. That white car of David Duran stepping underneath two fellow Chevrolets, and Stephen Harlow and Jesse Whittington. Of course, they have backed off from the rear bumper of Steven Stepien, but that's because Stepien has started to creep up to the rear bumper of Cedric Hunter. So the 45 car, despite setting off of the gate very quickly and stepping out to a relatively large lead, and probably the largest that we've seen tonight, it is starting to close back in. Faster lap times for Stepien. So far, you're looking at 38.9s between the top two leaders, and you don't get another 38.9 second lap until you get to Brandon Banks and Jamal Pugh running in that 6th and 7th spot that are relatively in the draft and using that to their fair advantage. So Hunter, of course, just maintaining a bit of that defense and running a bit higher on the racetrack. And we've seen some different philosophies with drivers, especially at these types of tracks. Oh, we got a spinner off turn 4 and trouble. Casey Neiden, Parker Bland, teammates involved. And the night for Parker Bland has turned sour. Neiden also with a bit of damage, but Bland in the worst situation of the night. And a car heavily torn up off of turn 4. Caution flag number 3 coming out here from the Irish Hills of Michigan. Let's get another look at how that all unfolded between the two SKM teammates. And we saw Bland performing well in the middle of this top group, and much like the last near spin for Bland off turn 4, a huge hit over correction to the outside wall, and also caught a separate car in that as well. Might have been Justin Erb in the 20. A car who was on the front row to begin this race. So we'll get another look at it from the pedigree perspective. Car just got loose, tried to save it, and then just came back up into the teammates of Erb and of Neiden. That's an SKM trio that is taken out in one fell swoop. And Bland with the worst damage of the 3, having to take it down pit road. And the car appears to be in a very ill spot as the leaders have come in on pit road. Pit stops that could potentially bring us to one more stop before the end of this race. And it's Hunter the leader, Stepien back in second, Whittington, Harlow, and a few others running third, fourth, and then the rest of the top 5. So here they come onto the pit lane. Hunter, of course, and everyone else taking 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles for a majority of our pit stops tonight. The runs have been long enough, but you start to ask the question, does anyone take 2 fresh Goodyear Eagles? It's a quick stop from Stepien. Cedric Hunter is able to get there. Is it enough to beat the 88 to the line? The answer is no. Steven Stepien grabs the lead back from the pit lane. And that is all on 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles on a beautiful race off the pit lane. Take another look at this as they were coming across to the line. And just by a nose. Doesn't even look like Stepien had it there on that camera. But Stepien indeed did. And he'll retake the lead and lead some more laps here from the Michigan International Speedway. So we mentioned that lucky dog fight that was developing in the mid-pack Brad Fulham was able to stay ahead of Warren Kyle Keith, so he will receive the SKM Lucky Dog and get back on the lead group, while Warren Kyle Keith will get that wave around from the iRacing official pace car, as he and Parker Bland would fight for the Lucky Dog spot at this moment, as Bland has just recently fallen a lap behind the leaders. As we continue working on our third caution of the night here from the Michigan International Speedway. Glad that you're with us for the Forever Rowdy 300 here on the KBueno Racing Network. Kenneth Bueno with you in the broadcast booth as Francisco Bacalhau is enjoying his time at the Music City Nashville Super Speedway for the Cracker Barrel 400 and the NASCAR Cup Series race that's going on here tonight. We mentioned that Steven Stepien has been a part of many successive stories at tracks like these. And so far, Chevrolet is winning all 2-mile D-shaped oval races in Droppin the Hammah Cup Series history. Lawson Peel, of course, being the first to do that challenge and get the accomplishment, winning there in the Sunset at Auto Club Speedway, and then doing it all over again, taking control on a strategy late to be able to win that Michigan International Speedway race. And then, of course, this season with the win of Steven Stepien getting it done in SoCal, being able to do it for a second consecutive time and keeps Chevrolet at the top of the board. When it comes to racing at these types of speedways, Stepien will have control of the lead. As we come off of turn 4, pace car is down. Cedric Hunter on the outside of the front row, and a teammate in Stephen Harlow to help Stepien fire off to turn 1, and fire off he does. Green flag back in the air from the Irish Hills. Stepien clears in the lead. Harlow clears for second to turn 1. And that is teamwork making the dream work. Dropping the Hammah, 1-2. In the running order, Hunter had no chance to respond as they got to full song, and the highest we've seen Harlow in tonight's affair. Hunter poking a nose underneath, can't quite get to the Harlow machine yet. Jamal Pugh in a race-high fourth as the battle for fifth builds up. Duran and Whittington side by side down the straightaway. And big-time drafting help is what you need to be successful here at Michigan. As Cedric Hunter points again to the bottom, looking for second, firing off, entering turn 2. And door shut on him by Harlow. We'll have to do it all over again. Whittington got loose. Exit turn 4. Tried to save the race car. Getting back in line with Jamal Pugh. Duran and Easley now go at it. Duran just stuck on the bottom. Nowhere for him to go. And we've seen that happen a ton at tracks like these. If you cannot, in the early portions of a restart, get to the outside, work with cars in a single file train, you may be left in the dust. And Duran remains stuck on the bottom. He retains P6. But it may not be for long. Easily makes the move in the draft on the high side. Brandon Banks is next in line for 8th. We'll see if that 98 car can make a step up to the high shelf or just clear himself at the exit of turns 2 or 4, while Hunter remains on the attack on Stephen Harlow. It has been not an easy run for Stephen Harlow tonight. His run through the mid-pack for a good portion of tonight's race. And the lowest of 15th where he started. Has made forward progress since the drop of the green flag, but he has not been as high as this tonight. And so a great run for Harlow, the Vermont native, trying to grab his first career victory. And memories of the late portions of Sunoco Cup action, where Harlow was in a similar situation like this late in a Michigan race, trying to get around Lawson Peel, door shut several times, and Harlow had to face the heartbreaking loss of what could have been his first career win. Wiggled loose at the exit of turn 4. Opportunity present for Cedric Hunter, doesn't take it. Instead, Jamal Pugh does. Looking for third to turn 1. What a drive from Pugh in his third career start. trying to go at it for his second consecutive win. And this time he's got help. Whittington on the bottom. Brandon Banks just feinted the help on the back straightaway for a moment. And Hunter is under deep fire. Cedric Hunter trying to work through the middle. Duran strikes from up top on the shelf. Whittington looks underneath. Now they're 3 wide. Duran is able to clear, get right into 4th. And it is top 4, all Chevrolets running back to turn 1. Top 2 teammates. Pugh looking inside for 2nd. Pugh trying to show that the Talladega win wasn't just a fluke, and he's able to put himself in the right place at the right time. And much like Harlow has been moving forward since the drop of the green flag, and now Markava Chevrolet taking a step underneath Harlow again, much like Hunter has been doing the last several laps, and almost similarly in an eerie sense for Hunter. I mean, to see this pack come on him, and now dealing with the effects of traffic, the dirty air, and the potential drivers that can squeeze and get around him. Saw that happen to Hunter after a quick fire off in the opening run of this race, and now with 56 laps to go, Hunter needs to stabilize, or else the bleeding can very well continue with side-by-side and drafting help with more Chevrolets on the horizon. Pugh attempts another move on Harlow, unsuccessful, hits the reset button, and David Duran running right behind, so will again be single file for the most part. And while you see everyone go all through these lanes here at Michigan and Terang, it's a great run on Pugh through the top shelf of 3 and 4. It's all in the attempt to get the clean air. It has become increasingly important, especially at tracks like these, to chase that clean air, and a phenomenon that many a driver are still working towards being good at. You know, aerodynamics have been a crucial part of this next-gen car since its implementation into the sim back in 2021. But ever since we got that mid-2025 aero update, and then iRacing added on to that with more data from NASCAR to be able to make these cars more realistic, they handle a lot like their real-life counterparts. So if you are in the tracks of a car in front of you, like here with Duran, you will get that aero wash effect. The car will start to feel a lot more understeery, and thus turn in the race car doesn't seem plausible. And you also couple it with the fact that if you do get clean air in a corner, car will naturally rotate, the air will come around the car much better, and you'll be able to get a better exit and more speed with more grip on corner exits. So that's why you're seeing all of these lanes being used at Michigan, a track that isn't necessarily known for being extremely multi-groove, especially in the sim over the last few years. But with this new update, forces the drivers to experiment. And with the oval refresh updates taking shape on iRacing as well, the sim has developed into making a lot of these intermediate tracks, Michigan Auto Club, and many 1.5-mile tracks, including Kansas that we saw, and Charlotte not too long ago through the regular season, become multi-groove racetracks where you're looking for clean air and you can find grip at any given moment of the racetrack just with how much rubber is laid onto the speedway. Cedric Hunter with a chance to regain control in the top 3, and he does get around Jamal Pugh, so the 45 machine for Cat 5 Esports looking for a way to slither in that line. Can't quite get there, and here comes Pugh back to the outside in the running for 4th. So with 53 laps to go, we are nearing what could be a one-stop for the drivers. They're approaching their 13th lap on a green flag stint. And again, we did see drivers go around 50 to 55 laps. We didn't really see the full extent of a green flag pit stop sequence because of that yellow that did come out off of turn number 4. However, with everything that happened so far in this race, you can imagine probably can go a little bit of a distance, maybe not 64 laps total, but you could get relatively close to it. So with this race, we may end up seeing a lot more of a fuel strategy affair taking place, given that a one-stop is in the cards for the drivers to make it to the checkered flag. Big wiggle by the leader in Stepien, gets Harlow to reel him back in. And it's Cedric Hunter once more on the fire-off, trying to get a move underneath Harlow and clear him off turn 2. Stays underneath those two cars, door to door, coming down the back straightaway. David Duran sneaks up into. He'll fill the hole. He'll make the space happen. He'll settle back into 3rd. Hunter with none of that drafting help coming back to turn 3. And in our final 50 laps of this race, it is all Steven Stepien at the head of this field. Talk about great runs tonight for Droppin the Hammah. Not with another one of their teammates in tonight's affair of Alex Muscarello, who usually drives the number 48 and was going to run a commemorative Kyle Busch paint scheme tonight. He did join us in this race, although he ended up 96 laps down, so it was a relatively early exit for Muscarello. Hasn't been a pure factor in this race, but Harlow and Stempien, the two teammates at Droppin the Hammah, they have been friends and fellow sim racers for a long while with each other, now working in tandem to keep their placement at the front of this field. And almost like a super speedway affair, looking to alter the rhythm of this race. And we have also talked about control and how those dynamics work in racing. And more often than not, you do see that at the big 2.5 mile super speedways, Daytona and Talladega, where for the most part, you end up seeing drivers that are teammates, if they're able to control the inside, the outside, whether it's 2 or 3 cars, and how many of them end up working together. If they lead the lines, they could dictate the tempo, whether it's more of a rush scenario, whether they play it more aggressively, whether they be a little more conservative. But the most important part is that they're leading each and every line. So they get to dictate how those lines react, especially if no one wants to reach out and take a third or fourth or fifth lane to be able to get around the teammates that are at the front of the field. And you can almost make the same case tonight here in Michigan with these two. Because as long as Harlow is able to play that defense on Cedric Hunter and make him waste his Goodyear Eagles, that is enough juice in the tank for Stempien to save throughout the course of this green flag run. And then when the tires really matter, Stempien is able to stretch out a gap and for the most part have Harlow right behind him, who isn't pushing too hard since he's using the outside naturally to defend against Cedric Hunter. Now, of course, we're talking about Cedric Hunter here, a 3-time race winner this season and one of the best drivers in the top 10 through the point standings. Could very well be a championship contender later this season. He's not an easy driver to defend against because his offense plays so well. And again, he's one of the best striking drivers when it comes to making passes on long green flag runs. But the longer that Harlow can do this, the more it exhausts Cedric Hunter, makes him more frustrated over the run. And then an even better note, that David Durand is not too far behind. The top 4 have pulled away from everybody 5th on back, starting with Jamal Pugh in that battle with Kip easily off of turn 4. Now make it 3 abreast with Richard Schwavely and James Kunkel sneaking back into the top 10. But the longer that it happens, Durand can play a bit more offense. And then it almost feels like an Oreo situation, but Hunter wants more. He's desperate to get back to the front. He's got to look underneath Harlow. He's got to look underneath Stempien. He's sideways off turn 4, trying to save it down the straightaway, and he does. What a save by Cedric. 3rd time that we have seen a driver commit absolute heroics behind the wheel. And the latest addition goes to the Canadian and the 3-time winner this season. Oh my. Talk about car control at an all-time high. Cedric Hunter with what might be the save of the year. See, he looked underneath Harlow, had a chance to get around Stempien, and the car just unraveled on the rear end. Wiggled it, full song, keeping the foot in it. And Hunter just reemerges back on the racetrack as if nothing happened. Although the bad news for Hunter is he is back in 11th. So his track position will be at a cost. His tires will be hot. And coming down to 44 laps to go. If there is going to be some kind of concern for fuel saving and having one more pit stop until the end, whether that will affect Hunter in the long run on tires and whether his pit stop may come a little earlier than the rest of the field. So after that illustrious save from Cedric Hunter, business as usual back to the front of this field. It's Stempien in the race lead. Stephen Harlow runner-up. The two teammates working together well. David Durand is up to a race-high 3rd. We've seen him back and forth throughout the course of tonight's affair. Also with a great save as well. Could be in contention with Cedric for save of the night alongside Parker Bland. And despite starting 21st in tonight's race, Durand has done a great job at working up through the field and keeping his head in the game. That's something that for a lot of drivers is a skill they develop by being relentless and just staying in a fight, even if the race looks dry, even if things don't necessarily look to be going in the favor of a certain driver. As long as they continue to stay in the race mentally, a lot of times it works out for them, and we have seen that happen and unfold many a time in this series. Cedric Hunter is a proper example of that, where he's gone from spinning to be able to work his way back to the front for either a good finish or a race victory. He runs in third. Kip Beasley, also like Duran, has been kind of on a roller coaster ride. The Nixa, Missouri native has been as far back as the top 15 and a bit beyond that. But Beasley has slowly kept his head in the game, and this Chevrolet over this run, track position has been in his favor, and this Nitro Performance Chevrolet has now been able to squeeze into the top 4, especially after that save from Cedric Hunter opened that door for Duran to take third and easily to grab the draft of everyone right in front of him. So it's been a good night for Kip Beasley, but still a long way to go on our green flag run. Richard Swavely in a race-high 5th. And again, storylines filled with drivers who have had setbacks early in the night or just haven't had the pace at the beginning stage of the race, and in the second half have really come alive. Jesse Whittington in the same vein, someone who we didn't really talk about through this race much until this moment. And then even James Kunkel led a few laps to begin this race, and then ever since the contact with Kip Beasley, where he spun off of turn 4 to bring out the first yellow of the night, he has recovered to 8th place. Now under fire from Hunter, but still a top 10 in the cards for the Progressive Ford Mustang for SKM, a team that has led a bunch of laps tonight across several different drivers. Kunkel now being the highest running driver of the group alongside Richard Swavely, those two being the SKM cars that currently occupy the top 10. 40 laps to go from Michigan. It's been a good one tonight, and 24 laps in the books from the Irish Hills. We again weigh a possible green flag stop. Now, if the drivers are to make it all the way to the end of this race, and if they are able to make it all the way on fuel, it would be a proper 64-lap run. Again, we haven't seen a run that long tonight. We have seen runs as long as 50 laps during our longest green flag stretch, but then the yellow came out with Ethan Thompson coming to a stop on the back straightaway, so it did often stifle the possible strategy cards that could open up. And while Auto Club Speedway was a very different story in that sense, we did see proper green flag runs develop. We did see the extent of the long green flag stretch and how much drivers could save and how long they could go. The endurance factor hasn't kicked in as much tonight in that fuel strategy conversation. So does that affect the way Stempien plays this race now that he is leading and eventually is going to be wasting more fuel than anyone else in this race? Or is there not really a sign of concern because they know that one stop is going to be coming up and they eventually have to make that decision? Or if they know they can make it all the way to the end, they don't necessarily have trouble with sleeping at night thinking about the possible strategy cards that could be in play here. In the onboard look with Steven Stempien shows no sign of saving any type of fuel. So whether it is a full push until the end, whether it's a full push until the next pit stop, and if a yellow flag does come out, we will eventually see drivers come in on pit road. We've had all of our green flag runs be long enough to the point where the field have elected to go for 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles. No one in the field has elected for 2, something that is a little bit surprising to see, given the nature of track position, how much it matters here at Michigan. But still, yet to see a 2-tire call by any driver in the field. Here's our nice battle for 11th place on the racetrack. Dana Shepard, that bright green Chevrolet on the high side, also in one of his first few Droppin the Hammah Cup Series starts on behalf of that brand new up-and-coming DEP racing team, and the veteran of Brandon Banks, a 2-time winner in his career and the current points leader, getting around the 44 car. Kevin Roy, who's led a few laps tonight, has recovered a bit in his combos Ford Mustang, but hasn't been in the spotlight since taking the lead early on. He's under fire from Charles Stevens as those two continue to go at it. And as we've talked about, honoring the life of NASCAR legend, 2-time Cup Series champion, and the winningest driver in all of NASCAR ever across all 3 national divisions, Kyle Busch. Charles Stevens running a very specific Kyle Busch paint scheme, not honoring a specific scheme that Kyle Busch ran in his career, but it is a general look, sponsor-wise, decal-wise, and number-wise for the 84. Very smartly putting that Kyle Busch RCR 8 font on his number 84 that usually has a different type font on it. So Chuck Stevens getting in on the remembrance and honoring of Kyle Busch tonight. Of course, a very somber note in the racing world over the last few weeks when we lost him on May 21st on Thursday afternoon due to a severe illness. Again, our hearts and prayers are with Samantha, Brexton, and Lennox, the entire Busch family, as they go through this time. And we mentioned the racing family runs very deep for fans, and organizers of sports like NASCAR, IMSA, IndyCar, Formula One, and the list goes on. Motorsports is a very large family, and the same goes here on iRacing, where these drivers, whether they raced in real life or whether they're using the sim as a way to experience their real life racing dreams, they all grew up. They all share a passion for racing and motorsports. And series like these, they enjoy NASCAR Cup Series racing. A lot of them have come to either love or hate Kyle Busch over his long and illustrious winning career. And when there is a loss in the racing community, whether it's between the sim drivers or whether it's in the real world community, everyone bands together to support, everyone bands together to give a moment of silence. And I'm sure everyone racing with the thoughts to the Busch family as well. As we watch a Kyle Busch-inspired paint scheme at the front of this field continue to lead this charge. Steven Stepien has, up to this moment, led 64 green flag laps for Michigan. We mentioned he led 66 laps across Michigan and Auto Club in 3 combined starts over the last 2 seasons. He has nearly eclipsed that mark in just 1 race tonight. That's how dominant he has been this evening ever since taking the top spot. Clean Air has given him a good spot. And the Massachusetts native searching for win number 3, trying to match Cedric Hunter in most wins by a single driver this season. Cedric Hunter has found his way back to the top 5, so there's good news if you're a fan of this 45 car. Had to really scrap to get back to this spot, but despite having one of the best saves of the night and losing all that track position, falling through to 11th, Hunter has been able to nicely work his way back through the field. And taking a look underneath Kip Easley in his Nitro Chevrolet, that battle will be nicely put in for 4th place. And this top 5 have pulled away from the rest of this field. It's a full second all the way back to Richard Swavely, who has commanded the likes of this second group. Jamal Pugh in 7th, Jesse Whittington in 8th. There's that battle for 7th place and 6th place going on right now, as Garrett Walden runs in 9th, and Brandon Banks, the points leader, inside the top 10. It's been fun to watch these battles develop, but of course, very early days in this 110% power output. And for those who weren't around for the early portions of this race and are not entirely sure what 110% power means, it basically means adding 10% more power to the original 670 horsepower intermediate package. So we run with the same diffuser underneath. We run with the same engine. 670 was the initial template as Stepien continues to lead. It was Swavely that went sideways off turn 4 right off the nose of Jamal Pugh. But again, part of that is the aero pack effect with traffic right behind. Another factor is that amped up power from 670 to 737. It's been a well-embraced feature on iRacing to this stock car community, and especially to this series, as they have adorned the higher horsepower output. And Swavely with another save, making it 4 cars that have saved their race cars tonight. We may start to add up a save list, kind of like how there's a flip counter at the Chili Bowl. Might be a save counter tonight from the Irish Hills. It's been that crazy to watch. And Richard Swavely says his tires are cooked, and it's his time to come in on pit road with 30 laps to go. Again, maybe one more pit stop on the cards. Swavely stop here possibly solidifies that everybody has to come in at least one more time. So the Ditech.com Ford is in. Who else joins him on pit road? So as we look at it, leaders continue to remain on the racetrack. And now another taker, Kip Easley from 5th. Brandon Banks now from 9th. Points leaders in. Fellow teammate is in as well. And now you ask yourself, if you are Steven Stepien, who has wasted the most fuel of anyone tonight, do you come down pit road in the next few laps, or do you wait things out? We have seen the overcut play a very big role in who takes the lead late. And especially here in Michigan, the tires have worn down. The track has remained as hot as it's been tonight from the start. And so is there a possible pit strategy ploy by the race leaders, knowing that tires are going to come at an absolute premium? Sees in the rearview mirror, his teammate and Hunter do not come in. Neither does David Duran. but the eventual cycle has begun. Several more have hit the pit lane. Dana Shepard is in. Casey Knighton from the top 12 is also in on pit road, and the rest have come out. Easley and Banks in tandem, nose to tail, as they come back to the merge point off of turn 2. And with 27 laps to go, this will be the money stop, understanding if we do not get a yellow flag. Remember, as we were starting the pit cycle last time around, we did end up with a yellow that brought the field to a halt. So we'll just keep an eye on where the rest of the field stays in put. But the top 4 stay out, rest of the group is out as well. There's the onboard look from Walden. Let's get a proper look here at where this cycle will start to come in. There's lap traffic in the front of the race leaders, way off in the distance out in turn 3. And so Stepien just continues to stay up in charge with his teammate right behind. They're all riding the yellow line, so could this be the pit stop for the leaders? There it is. They're slowing down. They're coming in on pit road this time by Harlow, stepping out and nearly hitting the pit road attenuating barrels. Got close to danger on the first green flag stop with Warren Kyle Keith and nearly did it to his teammate. Trying to maximize the speed off of turn number 4, but the leaders are in. And with 25 to go, Cedric Hunter waits the extra lap alongside David Duran and Jesse Whittington with a few others to spare behind them. So question mark, do they come in this time by? Or is it a matter of waiting? Cedric Hunter runs low. He'll pivot to the inside of the racetrack. Duran will follow, so the top 2 will come in this time by in that final green flag stop. Again, all about trying to avoid a pit road speeding penalty and a black flag, as Stephen Harlow may have been dealt a race-losing blow, but he does not. As he evades the pit road speeding penalty, here comes the leaders around them. Fresh tires will matter. Stepien with a great pit stop at the end, and all of them taking 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles up until this point. So it's Whittington, Walden, Stevens, and Jamal Pugh that have yet to come in on pit road. Pugh is in this time by. The rookie steps in, and the rest of the field will come on through, all waiting for Jesse Whittington to make his stop as Harlow and the gang start to unlap themselves. And this is going to get really fun around this top 10 and even through all the lap cars. Just trying to get around Whittington on the fresher Goodyear Eagles. Is this going to be a problem for Stephen Harlow and Brandon Banks? Duran getting around as well, so it's going to be an interesting blend to see where he comes out in all this. Again, all of them are behind Cedric Hunter, while Stepien and Cedric are together. So just a slower pit stop overall by Stephen Harlow. And remember, him and Stepien came in on the same lap and both took 4 fresh tires. So there wasn't necessarily a split decision call. It was just a slower overall stop by the number 6 machine. So this is the battle for the net race lead. Within a few car lengths, Hunter is charging. Hunter's getting around. Hunter to the net race lead. What a drive from Hunter. And does Steven Stepien make a retaliating move? Still waiting for Jesse Whittington, Garrett Walden, and Charles Stevens to eventually come in on the pit lane. In comes that yellow and blue Kellogg's Chevrolet. Garrett Walden is in. Chuck Stevens remains out an extra lap. And Jesse Whittington getting to share his first laps led tonight from Michigan. Although it's under that green flag pit stop sequence. We'll see how that all ends up with 20 laps to go. But he is on the longest stint of anyone so far tonight at 43 laps. We know Walden has already made his stop, so it's down to the rest of the field to either unlap themselves or waiting for Cedric Hunter to eventually take over the net race lead. Whittington has not made his decision yet. He'll stay out the extra lap. So will Chuck Stevens as far as we're concerned. And this is the net race position. Hunter up in front, Steven Stepien running second, and then it's Harlow, Easley, and David Duran. The net top 5 once the rest of this cycle breaks through. And that took a lot of drive and guts from Cedric Hunter to make that move on the inside. And again, it's only 1 lap difference between those 2 cars to the favor of Hunter. So you saw that big time swing in lap times and momentum between those two cars. Might just be an effort for Steven Stepien to save a bit of his Goodyear Eagles before it's too late. Remember, this is a 20-lap run until the end of the race. This is far from over. So there's a lot still to be said for what this 45 and 88 car can cook up, and a similar battle to many of the 2-mile D-shaped oval races we have had in series history. And think of the close nature of Cedric. At tracks exactly like these, Auto Club Speedway went green all the way into the finish, with Stepien leading the most laps. Who finished second to him? Cedric Hunter. Back at Auto Club Speedway the season before, who ended up finishing second to the eventual race winner in Lawson Peel? It was this man right here in Cedric Hunter. Back in season 1 when we raced here at the Michigan International Speedway, and Lawson was able to go 2 for 2 on those sister-type racetracks. Who finished in third, giving a good charge to the end? The same man, Cedric Hunter. So a driver who has relatively stepped up his dominance after his teammate took the title, Zachary Hall, last season in this series at Homestead. Cedric is hoping to carry that flame for the Cat 5 Esports team and grab win number 4. And win number 5 total of his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career. 17 laps to go from Michigan, and the top 2 remain out in front of Jesse Whittington and Chuck Stevens. No signs that they are coming down pit road. 39 flats for Jesse Whittington. So not entirely a saving strategy as we ride on board with the 94 car. Has gone now 47 green flag laps. And again, we've seen drivers go over 50, especially in traffic where you have that opportunity to save a bit more gas in the draft and in the middle of traffic. Both the 94 and the 84, the Cypress Racing Academy teammates working together on this ploy. So we see a lot of drivers in voice chats with each other on the same team. And that usually helps them stay updated with where they are on the racetrack. And also, plans like these can unfold where the teammates decide, hey, let's just band together on a given strategy. Let's try something different than the rest of this field. And that's what these two Cypress teammates are doing right now, and a chance to grab their first win, respectively, in each series. They know they can most likely go over 50. We just don't know how exactly long they can push it. Although Stevens decides his call is now, coming in on pit road. So with 15 laps to go, Charles Stevens comes in, and Jesse Whittington, now the final driver that has yet to pit under this most recent cycle. Can he go the extra 15 laps, or is this overcut strategy just a sign of a prayer to have the racing gods answer with a yellow and give Jesse Whittington track position for a late race charge? Flames come out of the right side of the next-gen car. He cannot go any further. He comes in. There's a car spinning. Exit of turn 4 as soon as he's coming in on the pit lane. And that is potentially the grace, or is it, for Jesse Whittington as he comes in? And you can see him shaking his head. He did not want to see that at all. And will he fall a lap down? Overshoots the pit box, and it is Justin Erb who goes around for the slide. That brings us under a late race caution with 13 left. And that was just as Whittington was coming in. Scheduled pit stop to make it to the end. And this is all Erb by himself. Loose at the outskirts of turn 3. Got up into the marbles. And the car overcorrects hard, almost similar to what we saw Parker Bland do earlier tonight in the very same corner. And that is big-time trouble for the Home Depot Ford. Take a listen. Car steps out, tried to hang the throttle and save the car, but there was no saving that Mustang past a certain point. He's on pit road, and the big question is, do the leaders try a change of strategy here now that they've ran a few laps on their Goodyear Eagles? Track position has mattered a ton tonight. Cedric Hunter appears he's coming in. The field will follow. Whittington stays out as he will fall and he will most likely take the lead here as everyone else has come in. Not many. Duran, Harlow, Banks, Easley, and Swavely have joined the field, and nobody who has eventually stayed out other than Jamal Pugh, who is coming around to potentially get back on the lead lap. There's the race off pit road. Cedric Hunter with a clear and cut 2-tire call. 9.2 seconds for the Canadian. Gets him way out in front of Steven Stepien, Brandon Banks, David Duran, and a few other drivers. But this is going to get fun. Jesse Whittington is scored as the race leader. And Jamal Pugh, although we did see him stay out, it looks like he will give way to the drivers that did come off of pit road, and Whittington will not. So Whittington will be most likely in control of this race. We're just waiting to see where timing and scoring ends up settling out, but for the most part, it is that 94 car that got a blessing in disguise with a yellow flag, but he did come down pit road. So is there still a big question mark for Whittington at the timing of that yellow flag? It got really close because the pits close whenever a caution comes out. So as soon as Whittington was coming in, not sure if he barely beat the red lights or whether he did come down under a closed pit. But at the moment, it looks like a positive scenario that built up for Jesse Whittington, who joins us now. Jesse, we saw you on pit road, scheduled stop, under 15 to go. Caution comes out. Did you get in enough time? We did see those lights turn red, but were you able to get on pit road with enough time?
I mean, the admins cleared my black flag because I was already at the commitment line, but I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to be able to keep the lead because it's scoring me as having to let everybody by. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on. I hope they clear my black flag from starting up here. So I really don't know, man.
Well, regardless of what happens, you're technically in the race lead as we get to this restart, searching for your first career drop in the Hammah Cup win. What's it going to take, though, in these final few laps to stay afloat and get the dub?
Dude, there's a lot of fast cars right here, so just do what I can to hold them off and play some clean air.
All right, Jesse, well, we appreciate the time. We'll see how things cycle out on this yellow, but best of luck on the restart regardless.
Yep, thank you, man. You have a good rest of your night.
That's Jesse Whittington, driver of his number 94 Chevrolet, scored as the leader, so we are getting that information that they did clear the black flag. Timing and scoring is showing Jamal Pugh as the race leader, but we did see him give way. He's at the back of this field. Of course, that is with the scenario that did befall the drivers when that yellow did come out, and the same went for Whittington. So he will assume the lead, assuming that the admins will clear that black flag and give him the track position just in a moment of, well, a poor situation to deal with, a yellow flag coming out poorly timed inside 15 to go. And the lights will stay on from the iRacing official pace car. So that will lessen the time that we will have to go back green. It was going to be 10 laps to go, and now it may just be 9 or less laps that we have to figure this thing out. So the admins have a tough task on their hands to figure this one through. However, everyone's second on back, technically on the racetrack that you're watching right now, did come down pit road under that yellow sequence. Cedric Hunter was the winner off pit lane, a 9.2 second stop. So a 2-tire call for the Cat 5 Esports Toyota. Steven Stepien and the rest of the field behind had a slower stop, but of course they took 4 Goodyear Eagles for better assurance. And again, we haven't seen the difference of 2 versus 4. Call hasn't brung up in this race yet until this moment. So with under 9 laps to go, it'll be the proving ground of whether 2 is better than 4 tires. Jesse Whittington, barring any different decisions from race control and a black flag, if he is able to maintain the technical lead here on the restart and is able to bring the field back under the control of the green flag, what a moment it would be for the 94 car entering Season 2 of the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series after making his name known late in the years of the Sunoco Cup Series, in which that similar group banded together to build Dropping the Hammah Cup action that you're seeing here tonight. And in every single start of Whittington's Dropping the Hammah Cup career, his 10th tonight here in Michigan, all of them have been a progression of track position. His first race, he finished 24th, then 18th, 17th, 16th, 11th, 6th, 5th, 4th, and a career best of 2nd place at Talladega just 2 weeks ago. So it's been progression every single night for Jesse Whittington in this series, and now a chance to progress into victory lane for the first time in his career. You have Cedric Hunter, the 3-time winner, on the outside of the front row. Steven Stepien, the most dominant driver of the night by far, inside row 2 with a chance to push that Chevrolet to clear in turn 1. David Duran, the standout rookie, on the outside of row number 2. Points leader Brandon Banks is inside row 3. His teammate Kip Easley on the outside in the top 6. And it's Stephen Harlow, Richard Swavely, Charles Stevens, and the 12 of James Kunkel that'll bring in the rest of the current top 10. You saw Jamal Pugh, the 10 machine, let the entire field by as they enter turn 1, so he will give away where he was going to be. He's back in 15th, end of the longest line on the lead lap. And Adamins, it appears, will give Jesse Whittington the grace of the front-running spot as we'll come down to a restart inside 10 laps to go. Crucial restart here from the Irish Hills. It's Whittington looking for his first career race win. Hunter and Stepien and others trying to dethrone him of that possibility. Looking for that blue-colored restart zone where Whittington tries to launch off of the pad. It's a great jump for Whittington, but also a great jump for Cedric Hunter. He'll clear to second. He'll pivot to the inside. Door shut from Whittington as the leaders chase to turn 1. Is there enough for Whittington to hold on? Hunter is gaining down the straightaway, and he may look to the inside in 3. There's Stepien to play a distraction role to help Whittington pull away. 8 laps to go this time by, and the battle for second is on between the 2 best drivers of the night. No help down the straightaway. Brandon Banks pulls through on the outside of Duran. 1, 2, 3, single file back to turn 1. And there's the move. Hunter underneath. Hunter the dive. The cross off turn 2. Cedric Hunter to the lead. Unbelievable move. And Whittington is still within striking distance. Now Stepien challenges underneath. Trying to take away second. Bleeding time off the final corner. Hunter sees 7 laps to go from Michigan. And trying to pull away on 2 tires, the only driver in the field to make that call. And is it going to work out? There's Duran underneath Banks, shuts the door on Harlow, single file, Chevrolets all throughout the mix of the top 10 and the latter half of the top 5. Harlow the crossover on the inside of the racetrack, Duran looking to play a bit of defense as these rubbered up cars take on more laps, 3 wide behind them as Chuck Stevens watches James Kunkel, Garrett Walden, and Richard Swavely 3 abreast. 6 laps. Kunkel pivots from the high side, near contact off of turn 2. Harlow and Duran continue to go at it. And while Jesse Whittington watches on as Hunter remains in the lead, under fire from Stepien, but is there enough fire in the tank for Whittington to pull through? That gap increases that time by 5 laps to go, and Hunter is clearing away in front. Still looking for any advantage in clean air, but the car has not been able to get to the moment yet. Brandon Banks has come alive here in the final stint, chasing on Steven Stepien. washes high off turn 4, and the South Carolina native can continue a dominant season, one of all consistency after having his first finish outside of the top 10 come 2 weeks ago at Talladega, where he finished 14th. But trying to regain that streak of top 10 and top 5 runs for a driver who has overall been dominant on the consistent front, but now taking a keen eye on this bright pink Toyota Camry of Cedric Hunter, who this time by will see 3 laps to go in the Forever Rowdy 300. Whittington has been able to maintain at least 0.4 of a second, but he has not gained ground. 6 miles to go. Can we mention track position has been so important in tonight's race? Whether it was Stempien taking the lead and never letting go, or drivers that have made mistakes over the course of the night, having to scrap and claw just to get back to the same position that they were in before the slide and the mistake. Cedric was one of those drivers. Save off turn 2, bled back to 11th, and all of a sudden with a late race yellow is back with a breath of life. 2 laps to go from Michigan. Harlow and Duran going at it for the last spot in the top 5. Rookie versus vet. And Harlow with no help down the straightaway, side drafting. Duran clears. Still a possibility for them to scrap at it for the top 5 spot at the end of this race. But off the final corner, Cedric Hunter will see the white flag in the Forever Rowdy 300 from Michigan. Whittington is back by half a second. Banks is creeping in on Stempien for 3rd. And this night, topsy-turvy in the way these cars have handled. And while Hunter has had to work his way through traffic several times tonight, the 2-tire call, the difference maker to get him out in front. And in a night that's been all about remembering a NASCAR legend, Cedric Hunter is trying to cement himself as a Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series legend. Off the final corner, it's celebration. Cedric Hunter, 4th victory of the season. He wins the Forever Rowdy 300. Reaction from Jesse Whittington coming up and matching his career best 2nd place here at Michigan. Steven Stempien lining out the top 3. But once again, Cedric Hunter achieves victory in the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series, and with an average finish of 2.7 at 2-mile D-shaped oval tracks at Michigan and Auto Club. His 4th start is a race victory. Cedric Hunter comes across to the front straightaway, burns it down. Cedric Hunter, for the 4th time this season, will visit Droppin' the Hammah victory lane. And Hunter had to be relentless tonight. Not once, not twice, but basically 3 times having to cut through the field. But that sense of quit never showed up in this 45 car. And he's a winner once again in the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season. So as we bring in the end of tonight's Rowdy Forever 300, a night of remembering, a night with a somber note added at the beginning, but it is all smiles for Cedric Hunter. Ran his tail off and gets career victory number 5 in his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career, and 4th this season, the most of any driver this season so far with wins. Jesse Whittington matches his career best. He ends up on the podium in second. Steven Stempien, the most dominant driver of the night in terms of laps led, will run up in the top 3. We'll talk to all 3 of them before we close out tonight's coverage on the KBueno Racing Network. Brandon Banks ends up inside the top 4. Stephen Harlow in 5th. David Duran inside the top 6. So those 2 drivers got to battle with each other, and the 6th car ended up successful at the end. Kate Beasley in his first race with the new number change is in 7th. Charles Stevens back in 8th place. Garrett Walden ends up tonight in 9th. And rounding out the top 10, the rookie Jamal Pugh, after winning his first career race at Talladega Superspeedway, ends up in the 10th position. James Kunkel, after leading a few early laps here for Michigan, ends up settling for an 11th place finishing order, with Richard Swabley behind him in 12th, Kevin Roy for SKM Racing in 13th, Brad Fulham in 14th, Casey Knighton ends up with the top 15 and is the final car to finish on the lead lap. Warren Kyle Keith is the first driver 1 lap down. He eventually did not get the lucky dog that he needed to be able to get back in contention for the race win. Dana Shepard back in 17th is there. Justin Urban 18th, Parker Bland in 19th, and Charles Van Schaik rounding out the top 20. Again, many of these cars being involved in rather late or early incidents that gave them enough damage to be out of the race. Jason Anderson in 21st, Ethan Thompson 22nd from connection issues, and Alex Muscarella, early troubles, only completed 5 green flag laps before eventually having to take his car behind the wall. Well, as we welcome you to our KBRN post-race show, we bring in Cedric Hunter into Droppin the Hammah victory lane for the 4th time this season and the 5th time in his career. Cedric, there was all fight in you from the drop of the green flag. You took the lead early on, dropped back to the mid-pack, and had to deal with that several times, but it came down to that 2-tire call coming to that last restart. What was the mindset behind that call and that mindset taking the lead late in the race?
Man, well, I'll start, I guess, with the the green flag stop. I figured, I was gonna take just 2 and hopefully have a big enough gap to where I can hold off Stemp and Harlow, and I felt really good there. Like the 2 tires just took off way better than the 4 tires did. So it felt good. The caution came out. I was kind of bummed out, but I was like, hey, as long as I have control of the restart and I can actually clear for the lead, then I should be okay. And then found out I wasn't the leader. That was a bummer, but man, I just thankfully, I guess, when I had like that massive moment down the backstretch, kind of in the middle of the race, and had to move my way through or back through the field, I kind of just realized that, man, that slider line is probably the easiest way to pass, and I knew that that's how I was going to be able to pass Jesse at the end of the race there. So. He told me, I guess I caught him off guard, because when he had initially got off the gas, he was thinking about blocking me, and I was still full throttle, and I just sent it in there and thankfully cleared. And man, 2 tires are overpowered.
It all works out for you in the end, and I want to talk about your history with tracks like these, and I mentioned it a few times, but the way you've been around for tracks like Michigan and Auto Club this season, of course, no different. Average finish of 2.7 entering tonight. What seems to go right for you at tracks like these, whether it fits your style, and how did you use that to your advantage, even when you were mired back in the top 15 traffic, to work your way back up whenever you had those setbacks?
Yeah, I mean, I think tonight we had the speed, but I think we just got lucky. Like, it's with track position anyways. Like, we qualified well. Like, we qualified second. Not something that I can normally say that I do. And then even when I dropped back because I thought it was going to become a fuel mileage race, kind of like Auto Club was, and I didn't want to be on the backside. Like Auto Club, I think if I had played out the first run, I probably would have been able to win the race. It took me too long to save the fuel. And I didn't want to do that tonight, so I sacrificed the track position. Unfortunately, there was a caution, and then I was kind of stuck in traffic, and it took me a while to get back through the field. And then the caution came out kind of in the middle of pit cycle. So, and then I, regained the track position. Tonight was all about track position. I think I just got very lucky with how it played out. Kind of always staying out, one the longest, and just having cautions that fell the right way. But I honestly had no idea that my average finishing position was 2.5. So that's pretty cool. Hopefully we can keep that going to I mean, I guess I don't think we have 2-mile tracks to finish the season, but I guess heading into next season and stuff. And we have Pocono next week. Really looking forward to that. A track that I'm really good at, so hopefully we can make back-to-back on the wins.
A great win here at the virtual Michigan International Speedway, 4th of the season, and I guess that title of championship favorite is starting to come into play late in the regular season. But Cedric, I know tonight was more than just racing for a win. It was racing to honor the life of the now late Kyle Busch, NASCAR Cup Series star. I just wanted to get some of your thoughts on if you had any experience either being a fan or maybe a hater of Kyle in his NASCAR Cup Series days, and any thoughts about Kyle Busch after his loss and the way the community has banded together, especially here in this group.
Yeah, I mean, I was never really, I guess, a fan. Like, I never a hardcore fan of Kyle, man, but he was a hell of a driver. Obviously, the winningest driver in NASCAR history. So it's super unfortunate what happened, and we definitely lost him too young. I was really intrigued of how his later years of his racing career was going to end up with Rexley coming up through and stuff like that. And I know he had so much planned out for him and his son. So it's a bummer that we'll never get to see that to fruition. But I could say that like my favorite driver, pretty much all the Penske drivers, but specifically Joey Logano, and obviously they've had some run-ins throughout their careers, and never really a fan too much of Kyle. Always appreciated the talent, but never a hater. He definitely did it his own way, and I could definitely appreciate that. And yeah, we're gonna be rooting for his son coming up here in the next few years, and hopefully he can become, a NASCAR champion just like his dad.
Well, Cedric, we appreciate those words, and we appreciate talking to you tonight as you reach Droppin the Hammah victory lane for the 5th time in your career. On behalf of everything that makes this possible, everything that makes your team and your run possible, who do you got to thank for the run?
Yeah, man, huge shout out to I never shout them out because they're not an official sponsor, but man, shout out to Hello Kitty, man. They give me an extra 100 horsepower under the hood every week. I appreciate that. Shout out to the league admins and the drivers for making all this racing possible. Shout out to you for putting on a hell of a broadcast every week. So sorry I missed your pre-race interview. I had just walked away and I was watching your broadcast, and then I ran back and I didn't make it back in time. So sorry for missing that. Shout out to all the fans out there. Zach Hall for just kind of tuning in and just talking me through the last restart, basically. So again, huge shout out to the Busch family, man, and to my beautiful wife for sporting all these shenanigans on a weekly basis that we do.
Well, look. If it makes me feel any better, I got to talk to you at the end of this anyway. So, I mean, it kind of worked out at the end. So we did get to talk to each other in an interview, but in all seriousness, with this pink car that I think we may have to investigate the color because it may add some extra power to the machine. A great run tonight. A fantastic win here for Michigan in the Forever Rowdy 300. And Cedric, we always appreciate the time we get to talk to you, and best of luck as we move on through the regular season.
I appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
Cedric Hunter victorious for the 4th time this season and for the 5th time in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career. We're now joined by the unofficial 2nd place runner tonight, and that is Jesse Whittington. Jesse, of course, we talked to you right before that green flag restart came out. Cedric makes his way by. You hold on for 2nd. And looking through your resume, progression in every single finish of your career since the start of the year. How impressive is that to go from 24th after your first race to now 2nd in the last 2?
I mean, 2nd in 2 races in a row. It it's really nice, but it kind of sucks because that win is right there. You always want to have that one extra spot. You never want to settle for anything less. But in all seriousness, it's been nice. I told all of my teammates after about the first 4 or 5 races, I was like, guys, I've got to clean it up. I was just making too many simple mistakes, speeding penalties, and just getting into the wall, getting loose off of the corner, just rookie mistakes that I shouldn't be making. And finally just kind of settled in, found a groove. I think Charlotte was really kind of my big time turnaround race. And I think since then we're I got fourth place or fifth place at Charlotte, and then it's second Talladega, and then uh here. So it's nice, but I'm hungry for that win.
What did the car feel like there on that final green flag restart? Of course, you had spent a majority of the race hanging through the top 10, 15, finding where your placement was of this car, and then you end up in the lead, control of a late race restart. How did that car feel late and just driving here in Michigan in traffic and with everything going on in a hot track temperature?
Yeah, man, to be honest, the beginning of the race, I was trying to settle in. I figured, looking at gas mileage, we were anywhere between like 45 and 47 laps. So I was like, if I could save, 3 laps of gas per run, I could cut out an entire pit stop. So I kind of fell back. And then after that first caution, it was, trying to recover. And it's a whole lot easier to hold on to track position than it is to gain it. So, at the end of the race, I was planning on coming down pit and taking 2 tires and, just see if I could jump some people because I was still running high 39 or high 38s, low 39s towards the end of that run and really felt good. I'm thankful for the admins of, going back and looking at it and seeing that I was committed to pit lane as that caution was coming out. I didn't really have much of a choice to try to dart back on track, and so they went back and looked at that, and I appreciate them for taking a look. But man, at the end of the race, it the car felt great, but hard to do anything with it whenever I get that dirty air dump after Cedric throws it in there, and I don't blame him one bit. I wasn't mad at the move or anything. It just caught me off guard, and good job by him, and another impressive win. I'm just happy to be on the podium with the likes of Cedric and Stimpy after this one.
So upcoming few difficult tracks, Pocono, Phoenix. We're back on a super speedway at Daytona in late June and getting through these summer months leading to the regular season and then the ending of the chase. You came into this race pretty close to that cut line in points. Of course, with this finish, if it's official, going to be a very big boost and you're running for a possible championship. What's in the mindset to just keep that momentum high in the next few and close out the regular season on a high note?
I'll be honest, going into these races, the goal is try to find a way to lead some laps. That's a bonus point right there. And just get these consistent finishes. Like I said, I've had a good little run over the last month or so. And, just trying to keep up this momentum and because I missed one race earlier this season. I want to say it was Kentucky. And, I'm really disappointed because if it wasn't for that, I could be, 5 or 6 spots higher and plus 70 on the cut line instead of hopefully what looks like is going to be around plus 18 to 20. But, all in all, like I said a minute ago, I'm happy to be on the podium with the likes of these guys. They've been the class of the field all season, including Brandon Banks. All of the top 5, they've been running up front consistently, and I'm happy to be along with them. And hopefully we can keep this up and just keep on kind of chipping away at the cut line.
Well, Jesse, we appreciate the time. Of course, you were 16 clear of the top 12 cut line, and this finish is official at the end of it. Then, of course, will be a big sign of momentum. Before we let you go, Jesse, anybody you want to give a shout-out to or thank for tonight's run?
Absolutely, man. Before anything, my wife, my kids, I hate to say that they let me come out here and do this, but because they don't, but they support me. And, I always go inside and talk to my wife about these little video game races, and she makes fun of me, but it's all in good fun. I can't thank them enough for their love and support and letting me do this and do what I love. Shady Rays on the car this week. Love their glasses. If you have time, go to shadyrays.com. Go check them out. They're very good glasses. Nubwo on the side of the car as well, as always. Blacklight gaming chairs. Luke Haley My buddy, he's always riding somewhere on the car. Big Fish Barbecue there on the deck lid. Of course, I want to give a shout out to the Bush family, Samantha, Brexton, all of them, Kurt. I know this is a horrible time for them, and I know that they're probably never going to see me, or they might not even ever see this, but a huge shout out to them, because I know this is a horribly difficult time, even over a week later. And of course, thanks to you for putting on the broadcast every week, and thanks to the league for putting this on for us and having us a place to come race and have a good time every Sunday night.
Well, Jesse, it's always great to talk to you. Glad to see finishing second here from Michigan International Speedway. Best of luck, Jesse, as we move through this regular season. Hopefully we get to talk to you soon.
Absolutely, man. Have a great rest of your night, and I'll catch you next week.
Jesse Whittington unofficially comes home second here in the Forever Rowdy 300. We're getting word from Race Control. They are reviewing that final caution flag period that came out as Justin Erb spun off of turn 4, and they are reviewing the pitting after entering a closed pit scenario. They did initially clear that black flag to Whittington. However, just a matter of time. We'll see whether the officials make a proper decision or whether they will still award Whittington with that second place spot. But still, anyway, we move back to third place, where we are now joined by Steven Stepien. Probably the most dominant drive of the day for you, and almost similar in the sense to Auto Club. Took the lead. You never really looked back for a while. Final restart jumbled things a little bit. What did you see there in the attempt to get back to the front?
Yeah, I mean, one of these days I'm going to learn to take 2 tires. Obviously I wasn't anticipating the extra caution laps. I think if we didn't have those, maybe I'd have a good shot at the win. But yeah, I don't know. Just a series of events that cost the win there. The late yellow. I was kind of biding my time on Cedric, let him get out to a huge lead, and I know he took 2 tires, I took 4, so. And then the caution comes out, and I don't take 2 again, so what can you do? It's
one of those things where feeling the traffic very different in clean air versus dirty air, and I want to talk about just the extensive speed over the long green flag run. And there are many times, I've taken notice, some drivers trying to, what's that quote, aero packet on the rear end of your race car, get you loose right behind in traffic, but you stayed composed at the front. What helped you maintain that stability with this race car, even in the midst of traffic when you maintained third in that final run, but just over the long stretches where it mattered a lot?
Yeah, they were trying their best to send it in and get me loose, but I think just anticipating how the car is going to react when somebody does that, and yeah, just like you said, staying composed. That's the biggest thing when somebody does that for you. You gotta learn, have good throttle control, because otherwise you're just gonna send it around. I mean, I had a couple of close calls tonight, but kept it underneath me, and I had a good race. It was pretty dominant. I hate this 110 package. I'll be the first one to say that. I'm not a big fan of it, but seem to be doing pretty well with it so far, so can't complain about that. But just can't close. I look back at a couple of times this season. I could, me and Cedric could be flip flop right now. He could have 2, I could have 4. If I took 2 tires and stuff. It was just a couple times this season it's been like that. Late pit stop, not taking 2, and is what it is.
Well, regardless, third place finish. Obviously, things could change given the review that's going on post-race. But when you look at the next few races on the schedule, a season that is building up towards a chase for the Cup run later on this year. But when you look forward at Pocono, Phoenix, Daytona, the next few, what do you see outlining that you need to do to be able to either win those races or continue that consistent stretch?
Just stay within the top 5 going into the chase. And, come out strong, especially at Chicagoland. Hopefully we get the rescan of that. I don't know if that's coming out in time. I know I was reading something about the forum on that. Rockingham will be interested in Homestead. It's a good stretch of tracks. Dover, Darlington, 2 of my favorites. So just try to stay consistency. I'm going to miss Phoenix. I'm going to Florida, taking my wife for her 30th to Fort Lauderdale. So I'm going to miss Phoenix, but we'll rebound. Try to hopefully get a win at Pocono next week and maybe go to Daytona afterwards, get a win. We're always strong at super speedways, and Sonoma hopefully just get a top 5. I don't know.
Well, Steven, regardless, top 3 finish. Good points here from Michigan in the Forever Rowdy 300. Before we let you slide in and get out of here, I want to give a shout out to anyone that makes this possible for the team and for the run.
Yeah, hell yeah. I was hoping this paint scheme was going to give me some luck. I know Kyle Busch won with his paint scheme in Michigan in 2011 back in August, so I was hoping it was going to bring me some luck. But, obviously thoughts with, his family. It's terrible what happened there. And, glad I was able to paint this up and, get this into a top 3. You guys are doing the broadcast. I know you've had a lot going on. You're a fellow neighbor, pretty much, of mine almost. Hope everything's going well for you. I've known you have a few things going on the last couple of weeks. And then all the admin team, DTH, my pops, saw my buddy Jarrett out there in the chat too, my wife, my 2 kids. My daughter's going to be 2 next weekend, so my wife's going to be 30 this week. So it's got a couple of things coming up the next couple of weeks to be grateful for, and now we'll just get back at it next week at Pocono. Hopefully find some success I've had there and see what happens.
Well, I want to say a happy early birthday to both of them, and on the path of me being now part of the Massachusetts community, I may have to do an in-person interview at this point, just given how close we are naturally. But Stephen, always much appreciated the time we get to talk to you on a weekly basis. Congratulations on the podium tonight from Michigan, and best of luck as we'll hopefully see you at Pocono next Sunday.
I appreciate it, buddy. You have a good night as well. Thank you.
Steven Stepien, the 88 car, 3rd place in this final running order, 150 laps in our Forever Rowdy 300 from Michigan. Well, let's move on. Tricky Triangle up next on June 7th. That is 1 week from tonight, Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on the KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel. We'll take on Long Pond, Pennsylvania, and then over to Phoenix in the desert after that. Back to a super speedway at Daytona, the World Center of Racing that opened the season with Brandon Banks taking the dub. Sonoma, Indianapolis, and the season continues in the path to the chase for the Cup that begins at what will be the brand new refreshed Chicagoland Speedway. Eventually looking forward to the Charlotte Motor Speedway race that will bring us the end of this 2026 season. But lots upcoming on the KBueno Racing Network other than the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series. Of course, the SAC Cup Series in the middle of their hard-running Eliminator Chase run for the championship. As we had our most recent race not too long ago, they're going to be heading out next up to what's going to be the virtual Dover Motor Speedway, race 15. That'll come your way June 4th. 175 laps, again, 8:25 p.m. Eastern, right here on the KBueno Racing Network. So be sure to stay tuned in with us for all of the coverage right here. But on behalf of everyone at the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, for Steven Stepien, Chris Progar, Richard Swavely, Warren Kyle Keith, and the rest that makes this series run each and every week, and on behalf of all of the wonderful people at the KBueno Racing Network, for Francisco Bacallao, Keelan Belsha, Charlie Byer, Eli Comerford, Nate Polite, Mikey Neal, and the rest as always, I'm Kenneth Bueno saying congratulations to now the 4-time winner this season, Cedric Hunter, as he burns it down in the Forever Rowdy 300. As we say so long from Michigan, we'll see you at Pocono next Sunday.